Chapter 141 The Flying Squirrel Arrives. A few days later, the port of Crisvia. Aren't you afraid of me running away halfway, or in other words, going to tip off the Tianlong people? Jones marveled at the pirate ship full of supplies in front of him. I had known that after these few days of recuperation, my injury would no longer affect my movement. Just let yourself go like that, without even arranging for a person to monitor. How big is this person's heart? You're a scumbag, you know. You won't be able to live without anyone watching you. Loya flipped through the Byakugan and handed Jones the chart. As for escaping. Snapped. Loya grabbed Jones' outstretched hand and pulled it fiercely. Jones, who was pinched by the majestic force, even thought that his hand bones were cracked. You can try. Ow. The big Black Panther Gang Ying looked at the master from the side, then changed his posture and continued to lie on his stomach. It wasn't a short few days, but it was much more injured than Jones. Not to mention that the injury is healed, and now it does not say that it protects its owner, and it can only drink boiled mashed meat when it eats. Looking at Loyana's half-smile expression, Jones' forehead dripped with cold sweat and remained motionless. Soon, Loya let go of his hand and continued to hand him the chart. Remember, no matter the process, I just want the result. I see. Jones rubbed his right hand gently, feeling down. When he boarded the pirate ship, Loya suddenly shouted, "Don't worry about Minnie. Keep your phone warm and she will contact you." Minnie. On the deck, Jones murmured the name, and the image of a little girl appeared in his mind. Although he can keep in touch with each other every year, he really hasn't seen Minnie for too long. His memory of her still retains the way he worked as a handyman in the Athos family when he was a child. Although those days were bitter and tiring, they were the fondest memories in Jones' heart. For Minnie, Jones' eyes became firm, his whole body was full of energy, and he shouted loudly to set off. And, not just for Minnie, what Loya wants to do is exactly what he wants to do. The blood feud between his biological parents and his biological mother, and the feud between his sister and his sister for 20 years, he must return this debt to the Assos family. Whoa! The sea breeze blew the sails, and the pirate ship slowly left the port. Quietly watching Jones go away, Loya looked at the boundless sea and sighed faintly. Next, how will I go back? For this mission, the headquarters goal is to destroy Crisvia's leadership core and weaken the Athos family. This task was additionally completed by Loya. The current Assos family, apart from the last two old men stationed in the Holy Land, has no armed forces. Then Loya's own purpose, taking this opportunity to form his own power, was also overfulfilled. Although Jones is vulnerable in front of Loya, there is no doubt that the opponent's strength is only a line behind that of the future. With the blessing of the awakened and pseudo-dragon state, he can achieve complete crushing. But the gap on this line is very short and very long. The difference of a thin line represents the difference between heaven and earth. Maybe he won't be able to cross it in his life, or maybe he will cross it tomorrow, who knows. Anyway, he is strong enough now, and he can just obey himself. If you have two hearts, and kill Minnie together. Loya's eyes are cold, he has never been a good person or a bad person, he is just very rational. At this moment, Loya still doesn't know Minnie's surrender and what happened to the Assos family. If he knew, it might be another look for Jones. Blue blue, blue blue. Fuck. The sudden sound of the phone bug made Loya jump up in place, and it took a long time for him to come back to his senses. This, why is he meowing? Black technology is not so awesome. This is Crisvia. And, Jones just left. In case. Thinking of this, Loya quickly took out the phone bug from his pants kabuto, picked up the receiver, the familiar sausage head. Mohican hairstyle appeared in front of Loya. Oh, big flying squirrel, what's the matter? Loya. On the other end of the phone bug, the flying squirrel Hidong roared loudly, "Did you cause trouble again?" Cause trouble? What can I cause? Roja asked strangely, and then turned back to look at Crisvia, who was full of fire. On the island, the sound of guns and artillery shelling can be heard from time to time. After that day, the slaves who chose to stay freed the prisoners who had provoked Jones. As soon as these guys got out of trouble, they found that the ships in the port were basically destroyed and could not escape. So they turned their guns and began to hunt down the once dignified guests on the island. Well, the so-called massacre. Although they did not dare to do anything to children and women under the suppression of Loya, but to say that there was no trouble at all. What an international joke. Now Crisvia can't even find a piece of good skin. No house is embarrassed to meet people without a few bullet holes. Humph, Flying Squirrel said in a bad tone, and said viciously, no matter what you are doing now, I tell you, stop everything. I will arrive in 2 days at the most, so you can be honest with me, understand? I'll go. How did you do it? It's thousands of miles away from the naval headquarters. Loya was really surprised. Even for a wave breaker, the voyage was a full month. Just the stupid big muscle warship under the Flying Squirrel. How did he get here in 10 days at most? Don't worry about how I did it. You remember anyway, my rank is higher than yours now. You are a soldier, you have to obey orders. Do you understand? Get it. The Flying Squirrel was really frightened. He killed a Tianlong man just after he arrived on the island. The ghost knows what earth-shattering things he will do next. Luoya rolled the eyes of the dead fish and muttered in a low voice, the first-level official crushes people to death. But when he thought that the Tianlong people foolishly promised the position of Lieutenant General of the 17th Headquarters, he couldn't help laughing. This actual combat mission is really long. But after going back, the benefits are also great. But then again, Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel, did you come on a warship? Loya thought about this serious question. Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel, by the way, are you planning to let me go back on your warship? Bullshit. Of course. It's impossible. The Flying Squirrel's words made Roha's heart fluctuate, but at the end of the conversation, Roha was relieved. Didn't you say that you won't get dizzy on the animal's back now? So I brought you a small gift along the way, and you can sit on it and go back. Little gift. Sit down. Arriving at the 3rd level, Loya was still dizzy on all means of transportation, except for his own magical creation. He was dizzy on everything. However, with the passive skill of Longway, Loya can enslave some animals. As long as he is determined to be a slave from the bottom of his heart, he will not faint when riding on it. Just as Natsu won't get dizzy when he treats hubby as a family member, Loa won't get dizzy when he treats his mount as a slave. It's bullshit, but it's true. And, isn't the setting of the Dragon Slayer stuns the vehicle even more nonsense? Chapter 142 Pretend Not to Know. Additional 4/5 for the head Momo. If the Flying Squirrel mentioned the small gift, if you really think that it is just a small gift, it is a big mistake. This is Crisvia. If you want to go back from here, according to the route of ordinary pirates, you need to cross the upside-down mountain and go all the way along the Great Route until the Chambord Islands turn to reach the Navy headquarters. And naval warships with sea-floor stone bottoms and special power can directly cross the windless belt from the North Sea and enter the Great Shipping Route. Very time-saver. But that's at least 3 months. Changing to a wave breaker also has a full month's voyage. For such a long distance, what kind of animal can support Loya to swim back all the way? Whatever it is, one thing is for sure, this little gift won't be easy. Loya suddenly had some anticipation, and the Flying Squirrel brought him a small gift. But before that, Loya looked back at the utterly destroyed Crisvia, a pain in Kiba. How should this mess end? The Flying Squirrel mentioned 2 days, but in fact he only spent 1 day. When night fell the next day, the warship slowly sailed into the port. Looking at the neat and bright port made of ice, the Flying Squirrel only felt that there was a suffocation in his chest that needed to be vented. What is this? Snow Park. Do you think I don't know what you did? You smashed this port to pieces. Not even the scum is left. But now is not the time to teach Loya a lesson. The rapid march made the warship's engine overheat and explode, and it is in urgent need of repair. Otherwise, let alone take Loya back, he himself needs help from others, which is just ridiculous. The flying squirt jumped off the warship with a whoosh, and stepped on the ice floor that was still tattooed with pleasant goat. Loya, where is the repair shop on the island? Loya, who had just arrived, stopped and looked left and right, suddenly showing a Yao Ming face. Oh hey, did I say I didn't believe you? The flying squirrel sipped Kiba Hanako, feeling that his IQ was insulted once again. He suddenly pulled out his saber and pointed at Loya. Bastard boy, did you destroy the repair shop too? I didn't do it. Loya stared at the flying squirrel with a stubborn neck, and then pointed to the former slaves and prisoners who were pretending to be handymen behind his back. I don't even know where the repair shop is, they put it there. Blown up. Those people were silent and condensed neatly. Loya boss, this is not the same as what you said. Didn't you say it's good to clean up so that the big guys in the Navy don't have any doubts? Why did you sell us in a blink of an eye? In this regard, Loya can only express dissatisfaction and hold back. The ghost knew that he would encounter a situation where the flying squirrel would look for a boat as soon as he came, and his carefully arranged reception route went wrong from the first step. If I don't take you to the top, do I have to do it myself? Who? Exploded. Flying squirrel let out a long breath, and then, clang. I'll kill your tortoise grandson. What if the island is full of ruins? That's it. Just like the rubbish under the bed, it can't be seen, it's clean and tidy. On this day, Loya meticulously arranged the questions that the flying squirrel would encounter and ask after the arrival, and made arrangements in advance. However, he never thought that the first thing the flying squirrel did when he came was to find a repair shop. How worried you are about me, the engine exploded when you were on your way. At night, the flying squirrel and Loya sat opposite each other at the wooden table. The white justice cloak was casually placed on the chair by the flying squirrel, and the collar of the purple striped suit was wide open, revealing the thick chest hair inside. Hiccup. The flying squirrel, who was already a little drunk, held the cup and raised it again. Come, Loya, toast for your mission. This reason has been used 7 times before. Opposite the flying squirrel, Luoya sighed silently, knowing that the flying squirrel's wine was so poor, he would not drink with the flying squirrel if he was killed. Oh, is that so? Then, a toast to your soon-to-be Lieutenant General. Ding. The 2 wine glasses collided with a crisp sound. The wine in the glass swayed gently, and against the backdrop of the bright moonlight, it was crystal clear and exuded an attractive wine fragrance. Should I tell him that this is the reason why 3 cups have been used before? Loya thought so, and suffocated the wine in one gulp. Forget it, just have a drink with him. It's really embarrassing to hide this mission from him. A pot of wine quickly entered his stomach, and Loya picked up a side dish, shook off the peppers on it, and placed it in the flying squirrel bowl. Flying squirrels don't like food that is too spicy, and Loya knows this. Then, he picked up the plate and poured the rest of the side dish directly into his mouth, munching on it. The flying squirrel who drank the wine in the glass put down the wine glass, stared blankly at the plate that became clean in the blink of an eye, and complained with dissatisfaction. Loya, you're too unethical. Che, if you want to drink with me, you will prepare this food. You are so stingy, how dare you talk to me? The flying squirrel was choked hard. Indeed, Eloha's appetite was not enough for him to beat Kiba Matsuri. He ordered the kitchen to prepare meals according to his own appetite, but he didn't expect to make an oolong. How about I let the kitchen do some more? That's not necessary. Loya squinted at him. In the middle of the night, let the chef get up from the bed and cook for you. You Lieutenant General is really stylish. Flying squirrel. Thump. Putting down the wine glass, Loya took out a napkin to wipe his mouth, and said, then what do you want to say tonight? Flying squirrel is a strict and conservative guy. Usually, let alone drunk, he has very little time to drink. Today, he even asked himself to drink, so there must be something to say. Hearing Loya's questioning, the flying squirrel knew that his behavior was indeed abnormal, so he stopped fiddling. He stretched out his hand and handed it to Loya. "Excuse me, give me some ice." Loya. Being provoked by the ice, the flying squirt immediately felt a lot more awake. He threw off the cloak that was used to wipe the water stains, and the flying squirrel looked at Loya seriously. "You know, you killed someone you shouldn't have killed." "Sure enough, this is the problem." Loya lowered her head sadly. When arranging for someone to clean up, the mashed meat with a glass cover on the stall was naturally discovered. Fortunately, Loya was not far from the spot where he was found at that time, and he rushed over immediately after hearing the words, "Dragon Man." Originally, he was going to silence the 5 discoverers, but after thinking about it, it was impossible to hide this matter, so he gave up the idea and just issued a silence order. He looked up at the flying squirrel, and those eyes were full of worry and helplessness. "I said, I didn't mean it, do you believe it?" "Bullshit." The flying squirrel suddenly shouted loudly, "If you really killed the Tianlong people on purpose, the 3 generals are already on their way." And, speaking of this, the flying squirt looked around carefully, and said in a low voice, "Marshal Sengoku will pretend not to know. Just remember, no matter how the top investigates, you will say you don't know. That's it. Don't you know? This is really..." The asylum from the Navy made Loya feel very warm. He smiled and nodded, "Yes, I know." Chapter 143 PP Shrimp, please. Additional 5/5 for Sect Master Momomo. Done. This matter is the most afraid of discussion, just mention it briefly, and the 2 of them have a tacit understanding and keep silent. Then, the flying squirrel chewed on the ice and continued, "By the way, Loya, have you found any trace of the Revolutionary Army on the island?" Revolutionary Army, there is a little speculation. At the beginning, Loya, who was only ready to complete the task, never thought that the Revolutionary Army would also be on the island, and naturally did not notice their traces. However, when he finished his business and was about to look for the artillery that had been smuggled to the island, he discovered that the underground warehouse where Jones stored the arms had been looted. It's really, washing, robbery. The clean one. The leading party Jones had a wonderful face at that time, black, white, blue and yellow, like a big dye vat. Then, with the help of Gang Shadow, Loya and the others found some traces. Although no one found out, what is certain is that a group of people took advantage of Loya to attack the island, and took advantage of the chaos to loot the high-end arms that Jones obtained through the relationship with the Tianlong people. The most important thing is that it seems that they can't take them all away. They also detonated the remaining munitions at the position under the Matsuri altar in the forest, destroying it completely, and burning a large piece of the ghost face insects that Jones carefully raised. That was originally one of the traps Jones prepared for Loya, but before he could stick to that step, he was defeated and captured. From the perspective of God, you will find how coincidental all this is. First, Loya was about to attack Krisvia, but Jones intended to use a knife to kill people, spread out the cadres, and gave the Revolutionary Army an opportunity to take advantage. Then load an island, attracting everyone's attention, the Revolutionary Army started stealing arms. In the end, the ghost face bug Jones prepared for Loya happened to follow the call when Sabo and others left. In desperation, Haku ordered the detonation of a ship full of arms and fled Ascension. Jones gnawed Kiba's teeth at the group of thieves who fished in troubled waters, wanting to dig out their intestines and wrap them around their necks before strangling them to death. To ask what is the last thing a hunter wants to see, it is this. You work hard to set up traps, use your body as bait, and work hard to bring down the prey. Then, a little thief steals your prey while you are not resting, which is really depressing. And Jones is even worse. Not only did the hunting fail, but the results were good. This is the most annoying. To quietly remove that amount of munitions, it stands to reason that no one on the island can do it except Jones. Because whether it is the port or the arsenal, cadres were stationed 24 hours a day in the past. Even if Loyaden Island, there are still hundreds of people guarding it. But it happened that way, which made both of them feel very strange. On the Navy's side, Loya can guarantee that he will not be involved, and Jones can also guarantee that he has not done this. Even if his subordinates were defeated, he had to have someone to do it. Then, excluding the situation that the Navy and Jones himself directed and acted, the biggest possibility is the Revolutionary Army. The reason for the two to make this judgment is very simple: only information. Even the Navy headquarters did not know about this matter, so the degree of concealment can be imagined. In addition to the CP organization of the world government, if you have to find a second-ranked intelligence agency in the op world, it is undoubtedly the Revolutionary Army. The Navy has to lean back. After all, you can't expect to be slaughtering and killing cannon-roaring combat troops all day long to make a difference in intelligence. After listening to Loya's story, the flying squirrel was also very angry. How dare they do such a violation of justice? The flying squirrel, who was angry at the same time, drew out his sword and shouted loudly, "This old man must make this group of worms and scum pay the price." Clap clap clap. Loya clapped, as long as you are happy. Not to mention the background of the other party, just talking about those manufacturers, they are all partners who have signed long-term contracts with the Navy. If there is no evidence to attack it, whether it is moral or other, the Navy's feet are not stable at all. Even if the flying squirrel feels very annoyed, people only need to say that these are the decisions made by a small group of people with separate intentions, coveting money. Can he still trouble the other party? But just like what Loya said at the port that day, this time, even if they justified that they were forced to sell arms by the Tianlong people, he would not spare them. However, this matter has to be considered in the long run. Once the shot is made, the problem must be completely solved, and procrastinating is not good for everyone. The best result is to master them in your own hands. However, did you just say Jones? Wasn't he dead? To suffer. Loya's heart froze for a moment, and the cold sweat poured out. To die, to die, to die, to die. I said just now that I unknowingly exposed the information that Jones is not dead. Even if he was drunk, the whole person was babbling about it. After all, the flying squirrel was a lieutenant-level Navy. What, by the way, he's almost dead now. Loya explained embarrassingly, his back was wet with cold sweat. Disobedience and disrespect is a terrible problem in the army. Even the three generals dare not disobey, let alone Loya, who has no military rank yet. Flying Squirrel stared at Loya solemnly, with a pair of tiger eyes, not angry and arrogant. He could see that Jones did not escape with his own strength, but Loya released the water. The sight of the flying squirrel was like a needle sticking into the skin, causing Loya to fidget. But at this moment, the flying skier suddenly covered his head. Oh, no, my head hurts. If I drink too much, I have to sleep first. Remember to wake me up in the morning. After saying that, the flying skier lay on the table and closed his eyes to sleep. Only Loya was left messed up in the night wind. Huh. Luoya exhaled a turbid breath, and suddenly felt a lot easier. I have to say, your acting skills are on par with the little fresh meat from the mainland. However. Then, I won't bother. Loya said softly, picked up the cloak beside him, and put it on the flying squirrel's back. What did he say tonight? Nothing. In the early morning of the next day, the port was simply repaired. A streak of golden light spreads from the sky, and the bright light shines on the layers of clouds, like milk bread covered with cheese. I'm starving. What are you doing here so early? At the port, Loya complained loudly to the flying squirrel while nibbling on the white bread. Did I make a mistake? I want a means of transportation, not an uncle. Why should I, the master, run here early in the morning to wait for it? This makes me how to face it in the future. I want to make him a slave. Regarding Roja's complaint, he clearly said that he wanted to wake Roja, but he actually woke the flying squirrel of Roja to keep smiling. and replied, well, anyway, you cherish animals, you should watch the fun. Then I'll take a look. I hope he is an inedible variety. Loya looked sad. At this time, a white wave rushed towards the port, and in a blink of an eye, it came to everyone. Then, puff! Loya directly sprayed out a mouthful of steamed buns. Is this my means of transportation? Isn't this a pee-pee shrimp? Chapter 144 New Naval Branch. The scientific name of pee-pee shrimp is mantis shrimp, and the English name is mantis shrimp, mantis shrimp. Taiwan is up closer to home. Even if it is magnified more than 100 times, this thing has changed from the length of a finger that Loya is familiar with to a behemoth with a length of more than 3 meters and a height of half a meter. It still doesn't change the fact that it is a pee-pee shrimp. Loya recognized it at a glance. Anyway, the pee-pee shrimp he had eaten was in the ton. Snoring, snoring, snoring. With its tail buried in the water and its upper body lying on the harbor, this huge pee-pee shrimp spit out bubbles, and a pair of humanized big eyes turned around. Hum. The flying squirrel was about to say something when he suddenly felt a chill behind his back, and the strong chill directly froze most of the ports. The cold air was so sudden, pee-pee shrimp swayed a few times and fainted in the port. What happened? Flying squirrel turned his head and looked at Loya with a little speechlessness. The kitchen knife file and the shell-breaking nail floating on his head. Hey, you didn't want to kill it for meat, did you? Otherwise, Loya asked back. He sneered. You want me to go back on a pee-pee shrimp? I'm sorry, I can't afford to lose that person. What pee-pee shrimp? It's inexplicable. Flying squirrel impatiently waved his sword energy, trying to smash the ice blade on Loya's head. The surrounding soldiers were all frozen with blue lips, but don't catch a cold. But, ding! The crisp sound of gold and iron symphony. The flying squirrel looked at the ice blade with a black line, and the corners of his mouth twitched. But he couldn't let Loya eat it, and quickly explained, this is a pelagic shrimp, it's very rare, okay. A rare animal on the market that can sell 10 million Baileys. Pelagic shrimp. Loya glanced at the frightened giant pee-pee shrimp, who was foaming at the mouth, and patted his head. Oh yes, I almost forgot that this is the op world. Not to mention pee-pee shrimp, snails can be used as mounts. Okay, look at your face. Loya said. The ice blade on his head exploded with a bang, and the chill around him was quickly hidden. The warm sunlight shone on the port again, making everyone heave a sigh of relief. Not everyone can keep smiling in front of Loya's freezing ability. Seeing this, the flying squirrel retracted the knife and sheathed it, and handed the reins around the neck of pee-pee shrimp to Loya. You should get acquainted first, we'd better leave in the afternoon. So fast. Loya took the reins, a little strange. The engine has just been repaired and has not been tested yet. It is not safe to leave now. What if it stalls halfway? For Loya's question, the flying squirrel responded with a private chat look. But there is one more problem. We're gone. What about these people on the island? Although a large number of those thugs died, it is impossible to say that no one survived. As soon as they walked away, they lacked enough power to suppress this place. What should the thugs do when they invaded? Loya doesn't think. The rich island of Krisvia has no one's eyes on Yuhi. Hearing the discussion between the two, the surrounding slaves also pricked up their ears and eavesdropped nervously. This matter is related to their own lives, and they cannot tolerate being careless. It seemed that Loya would have such a problem, and the flying squirrel smiled lightly. We have long wanted to take action against Krisvia, but for various reasons, we have not dared to act rashly, but the corresponding there is also a lot of preparation. Quote. Rest at ease everyone. The flying squirrel turned around and shouted to the surrounding slaves. We will build a new naval branch centered on Krisvia Island. In 2 days at most, the nearest 106th Navy branch will be established. The branch will come to maintain law and order, please rest assured. Quote. Oh, great. Thank you, sir. The slaves laughed and hugged each other happily. Some people ran away to inform their companions on the island of the good news. Looking at their appearance, Loya smiled slightly. Are you building a new naval branch? It's really courageous. Well, after all, there are not many such prosperous islands in the North Sea. Flying Squirrel replied to Loya's words, holding one hand on the hilt of the sword and looking at the boundless sea. The criminal organization here has been eliminated by you. Let us the base can be established with peace of mind and contained within the protection of the Navy. Quote. You have done a great service, Loya. Hee. Do you think this credit will make me a general? Well, of course not. Then it's over. Loya turned to Byakugan. No matter how great the credit is, it has nothing to do with Loya, who is already destined to become the 17th Lieutenant General of the headquarters. As long as those three are still in the positions of generals, Loya's official road has come to an end from the beginning. Let's go, we'll talk later. With a wave of his hand, Loya took Pippi easily. No, the ocean shrimp carried it on his shoulders and walked towards the other side. The flying squirrel asked, what are you going to do? Ideological education. Great Route, Alabasta. Under the rainy banquet luxury casino, Kay Rockdale quietly listened to Robin's report. Robin's voice has a unique charm. At first glance, you will feel that this woman's voice is dry and unfeminine. But if you taste it carefully, you can find a unique charm hidden in it. Just like Nicole Robin, never be fooled by her appearance. Unfortunately, the interesting sand crocodile is not in the mood to feel it at the moment. The more he listened, the colder his heart became. So far, until the last word comes out, Christopher Loya has completely destroyed Jones' turf. With the exception of Jones himself, whose whereabouts are unknown, his cadres were severely injured in the attack. Only 2 of the 6 survived, and it was because the other side released water that they saved their lives. And the goods we need have already been burned in that riot. After listening to Robin's report, Sand Crocodile did not move for a long time. One person, just one person. The site of the famous Hunter Jones in the Dark World, Crispia Island, was completely destroyed. It's just the power of one person. Huh. Robin raised his head and looked at the shivering cigar in shock. Is he afraid? It seemed that his sight was a little too bold, and in order to avoid being angered by Crocdale, Robin quickly buried his head. For a while, there was a strong sense of depression in the air. I don't know how long it took. Crocdale slowly raised his head and asked, I remember last time you said that our people are going to deal with him. Did they do it? He was indeed frightened. Robin thought for sure. No, because the other party's whereabouts are uncertain. They have never found a chance to take action. Before reporting to you, I have ordered all of them to evacuate and return to Alabasta. Well, you did a good job. Unexpectedly, Crocdale did not get angry at Robin's overreach this time, but relaxed a lot. Looking at the banana crocodiles biting each other in the pool, Sand Crocodile lit the cigar with trembling hands and took a deep breath. Huh. The white smoke Jinchuriki column flew more than 1 meter away, slowly drifting in the air. See, Robin, that's power. When Robin heard the words, his body trembled involuntarily. Mighty, unmatched power. This is what I want. Robin, Crocdale roared nervously, give it to me, will you? Yes, yes. Robin took a deep breath, suppressing his inner unease. Facing the sand crocodile who suddenly went mad, Robin only felt a deep danger. She mustered up her courage, used her acting skills to hide her timidity, and smiled sweetly, of course, boss. It's just, you can get that piece of historical text. Chapter 145 Dover's Thoughts. In that faraway place, there is a place called the New World. And in the New World, there are some people who are more or less connected to the Dark World. Among them, the Flamingo of the Don Quixote family. No, the young Master Doflamingo is the most closely related to the Dark World. Because he is the giant of the Dark World, Joker. Notorious middleman. As a businessman, he is naturally well informed, and no matter what happens in the Dark World, he cannot escape Doflamingo's attention. On the throne of Dressrosa Palace, the tall Doflamingo quietly listened to Toripal's report. As the things that happened on Crisvia Island were put in front of everyone, in addition to the amazement of a group of cadres, there was a powerful and evil aura that permeated the entire hall, making people palpitate. It's interesting, it's very interesting. Doflamingo was laughing, but the happier he laughed, the more dangerous it seemed. However, such Dover as the Yasha recognized by Toripal and others. Their king. Hey, nah. Dover, Jones is dead, and now the North Sea business is ours too. Toripal laughed loudly, as if what happened was not a major event affecting the entire dark world, but an ordinary market competition. However, they do have the confidence to sit and watch Yunshu calmly. The Don Quixote family is not comparable to Jones in terms of strength or power. Although the leaders of both sides are of draconian blood, Dover is not Jones. He is not threatened by anyone, he has no fear, he is powerful and ambitious. The cadres under his command are not Jones's two-faced subordinates, and they are more cohesive. That's right, but there's still a family of Vinsmokes in the North Sea, Toripal. The speaker was a burly man in armor, with a big wave and a helmet with a cross visor, the best cadre of Dover's army of spades, Pika. His voice was shrill and piercing, completely inconsistent with his burly image, and looked hilarious. Fortunately, all those present were members of the Don Quixote family, and no one would show any disgust towards him. Hearing Pika's words, Toripal snorted and said nonchalantly, "It's all right, the Vinsmoke family is mainly engaged in war business, and has little to do with us. Besides, as long as we take the occupation first Lisvia, do they dare to go to war with us?" With that said, Toripal twitched to Dover's side. "Hey, Dover. What do you think we should do? You have a great appetite, Toripal." As Dover spoke, the entire hall fell into absolute silence. Even if these people are the top cadres of the Don Quixote family, Dover regards them as family members. In the face of the reckless and brutal Dover, one must also be cautious. After speaking to Toripal, Dover picked up the information in the other's hand and looked at it carefully. "Dragon people," Dover said softly, then shook his head. "Give it up, there's no place for us to intervene." "Huh, why Dover?" Toripal was very puzzled. Dover's business had fallen into a bottleneck period. If he couldn't find a solution, he might have to do this for many years. And the destruction of Crisvia Island this time is undoubtedly a huge breakthrough. At this point in time when the Vinsmoke family is gradually declining, are they still afraid of each other? "Toripal, what do you think the Navy will do with Crisvia?" Dover did not answer his question directly, but instead asked him a question. "What about the Navy?" Toripal was stunned, thinking quietly. Suddenly, he raised his head abruptly. "Dover. Tianlong people, Tianlong people. Fu. It looks like you've noticed it too." Brother Doflamingo smiled exaggeratedly, pulling the corners of his mouth to the left and right as much as he could, revealing sharp teeth. "Although the Assos family is weak, they are also from the heavenly dragons. One member, without enough support, the Navy would not dare to attack Jones. Quote, since they don't even care about the identity of Jones' Tianlong people, they completely destroyed Emerald Street." Dover crossed Erlang's legs, put his left hand on his knee, and leaned his right hand on the back of the throne, sitting domineeringly. "Then, one thing is for sure. In this event, the water inside was deeper than we thought. I've got little guts, pull, swish, gollum." In the hall, everyone swallowed their saliva with ugly expressions. That's right, they don't even care about Jones, the heavenly dragon who can still return to the Holy Land. Did they still care about Dover, the heavenly dragon who is regarded as a traitor? If you wait for someone to foolishly attack Crisvia, what will be waiting for them? The Don Quixote family has never been an opponent of the Navy. Once the identity of the Dover Tianlong people can't keep themselves, did they still care about the fragile Shichibukai position? At that time, even if it didn't follow Crisvia's footsteps, the Don Quixote family would never be better off. Looking at everyone's expressions, Dover clapped his hands and said, "Okay, let's stop here. Be careful during this time and see what the Navy does next." "Yes, young master." Everyone answered in unison and left the hall one after another. After everyone left, Dover still sat quietly on the throne. The sun shines on him through the carved window, and the pink coat is so dazzling in the sun, but it just makes his face shrouded in shadow. Christopher Loya, a Navy where justice must prevail. Breakthrough. Ha 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 ha. Not knowing what to think, Dover laughed loudly. The terrifying and frantic laughter echoed in Dressrosa for a long time. Chrisvia, port. And then, how's your ideological education going? Standing on the deck, the flying skier helplessly looked at Loya, who was carrying food below. "Hey, they are pelagic shrimp. Not a water truck. Can you still swim with so much?" Hearing the flying squirrel, Loya loosened the rope in his hand. Then he patted the pair of huge forelimbs of the pelagic shrimp named Pippi shrimp. Of course, the effect is an instant cure to cure the disease. "Look, even if I hit it, it won't dare to fight back." As he said that, he also slapped the pair of pliers vigorously, looking straight at the flying squirrel with a black line on its head. "In fact, I don't think your ideological education has had an effect. Looking at its current appearance, it is obvious that you are afraid that you will eat it. Is that garlic and spicy chan in your kabuto okay? However, as long as you don't eat it before going back." Thinking of this, the flying squirrel turned around and shouted, "Hurry up. Set sail in 2 hours." "Yes." With a promise, the Navy officers quickened their movements. Chapter 146 is Ace out to sea. What the hell? In the end, Loya still put Chrisvia's specialty Yuhi cherry juice and other sundries on the warship. Although it is very inconvenient to take it in this way, it is only a Pippi shrimp after all. It's a bit difficult to resist such a big group of salute shrimp. At this moment, while the soldiers were busy carrying supplies, Loya and the flying squirrel came to a hidden location in the port. The 10:10 is very abnormal today. It was clear that the sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly not long ago. At this moment, a gust of wind suddenly blew, and a large piece of dark clouds drifted along with it. "The storm is coming soon. Tell me, is there any emergency that requires us to return immediately?" In the face of Loya's question, the flying squirrel buckled his head and said, "Emergency. How should I say it? Which one do you want to hear first?" Puff. Loya spit out the juice in one sip. Co-authoring is more than just a hassle, right? Rolling the eyes of the dead fish, Loya chewed the straw and said vaguely, "Let's start with the least urgent thing first, and proceed gradually." "Okay, the least urgent. I think about it." Flying squirrel had a serious expression on his face, and seemed to find this classification very troublesome. It wasn't until Loya was impatient to wait that he continued, "The least urgent thing should be Lieutenant General Garp's grandson Ace going to sea to become a pirate." Lieutenant General Garp applied to Marshal Sengoku to be dispatched. "I want to get Ace back." Puff, puff puff puff. The juice flew as high as Izumi, then scattered and fell on the heads of the two of them. Cough, cough, cough. What are you talking about? Luoya was choked a lot, and at the moment was looking at the flying squirrel with a confused expression. What are you talking about? Is Ace out to sea? Isn't he 17 years old next year? Loya clearly remembered that the 3 second-hand goods had an appointment to go to sea at the age of 17. Why did it go out to sea this year? However, the focus of the flying squirrel is not whether Ace is full or not, but the grandson of the dignified Navy hero, and Iron Fist, Garp went out to sea to become a pirate. It's outrageous, Flying Squirrel said angrily. His aggressive appearance was even more frightening than hearing Loya's trouble. What do you think he thinks? The Flying Squirrel complained to Loya. As the grandson of Lord Garp, even if he doesn't come to be a navy, he might as well be a businessman. Why would he want to be a pirate? Ah, of course because his father is One Piece. Loya groaned in his heart. But he didn't dare to say this in front of the Flying Squirrel. Few people knew about this matter. Once it was publicized, it even directly led to the death of Whitebeard. No matter how stupid Loya is, he will never tell this terrible information, let alone flying squirrels, not even Zephykusen. After being surprised, Loya asked the flying skier for details, and then he understood what happened. To say that Ace will go to sea early, there is still his reason for it. Friends who have seen One Piece know that Garp really wants his grandchildren to become the Navy, but the way he educates his grandchildren. Not to mention that unique educational method made young Ace develop a rebellious mentality early, coupled with his unique identity background and childhood dreams, basically eliminating the possibility of becoming a Navy. Then, our dear Lieutenant General Karp, in order to reverse the minds of his grandchildren, take Loya as an example. Talk about how he joined the Navy and how his current strength is. Then he pointed to the noses of the two brothers and mocked, saying that they were a bunch of rookies or something. I want to use this to inspire the two brothers' goodwill and enter the Navy group. However, humph, I don't want to be a Navy. I want to be the Pirate King, and beat that Roja away. The above sentence was said by the two brothers while holding their noses. Hearing this, Loya was full of black gas and kept sneering, hee hee, hee hee hee. Beat me up, can I beat that bastard Ace? Of course not. Flying Squirrel shrugged, you and I have more important things to do. Huh, what's the matter? The Flying Squirrel took out a document from his close pocket and handed it to Loya. Look, Marshal Sengoku meant to let us deal with it. When you go back and take up your rank, the two lieutenant generals of the headquarters will lead the fleet together. In fact, in addition to this incident, our spies also discovered the Revolutionary Army in a country in the New World, and we need to send someone to deal with it. But Marshal Sengoku believes that this matter is more important in comparison. Oh, the problem is more serious than the Revolutionary Army, and two lieutenant generals must be dispatched together. That's really not a small problem. Loya became serious, took the documents and read them carefully. There are only 16 lieutenant generals in the Navy headquarters, and more than one lieutenant generals are required to be dispatched at one time, so the seriousness of the mission is second only to the major missions such as slaughtering demons. As his gaze moved from top to bottom, Loya's expression gradually turned from serious to livid, and then click. A trace of cold air spread out, and the thin paper was instantly frozen. He raised his head with a fierce look in his eyes, as if he was about to choose someone to devour. When did this happen? Seeing Loya's expression, the Flying Squirrel sighed in his heart. It's been more than a month, because the distance is too far, and we only got the news in the past few days. The Tianlong people seem to have given up on these remnants. So we have to do the rest. Quote. Who? Loya took a big breath in, out, and took a deep breath to adjust his mentality. A month ago, even rushing past it in the next second wouldn't help. Now, I'm afraid there's not a single living person there, right? However, the group of people didn't know that they had been exposed, and they continued to be immersed in their beautiful longing. There was no sign of running away. This was one of the few good news. The Athos family, yes, good. After speaking, Loya smashed the document in his hand, turned around and left. The Flying Squirrel sighed and continued to step on the broken ice on the ground a few times, making sure that nothing could be seen on it before leaving. Boom! Thunder Dragon suddenly appeared, black clouds overwhelmed the city. The torrential rain poured down, bringing a long-lost coolness to this autumn afternoon. The autumn wind is rustling, and all things wither. It's a good time to kill. More than 2 months later, the Marine headquarters, Marineford. The weather was getting cooler. Everyone was wearing t-shirts and shorts when they left, and they had changed into long shirts and trousers when they came back. Woo! The loud whistle echoed in the port, and the busy sailors raised their heads and looked at the warships slowly entering the port. That's Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel's warship. The officer in charge of the port lit up, picked up his cloak, pushed open the door of the office and ran out. Now that Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel is back, then the terrifying recruit with unprecedented record has also returned. This is a big deal. The 17th Vice Admiral of the Navy is about to appear. Hum. The huge warship roared in a low voice, the sound was deafening. But with the help of the soldiers, the bulky warship landed gently without any collision. PFF'd. The anchor was dropped, and a splash of water was thrown on the sea. The thick hemp rope was thrown from the warship, and soon handymen picked it up and tied it to a solid stone pier. Whoa! The stairs were pushed over, and with a click, they got stuck in the grooves of the deck. A group of soldiers sorted out their appearances, put on their hats, and stood in a neat formation in front of the warship, raising their guns upwards. The Navy, who looked like a squad leader, stood at the forefront, holding a long sword. Prepare. Let it go. Bang bang bang. The neat gunshots sounded, and the air was filled with the unique pungent smell of gunpowder. This is the unique etiquette of the Navy. A salute to colleagues who return from every bloody battle. This rule does not exist in any naval discipline, but it is silently followed by everyone. On the deck, the flying skier quietly looked at the smoke in the air and smiled silently. Finally back, Malenford. Pat. Stepping on the stairs, the flying squirt walked down with a serious face, and came to the leading Navy, and the two sides saluted each other. Welcome home, Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel. Well, thank you for your hard work. The two sides chatted for a while, but the flying squirrel found that the other party's eyes kept looking back, and then asked strangely, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" The Navy touched the back of his head a little embarrassedly. Well, Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel, didn't Luo Yasong come back with you? Huh. The flying squirrel was startled and quickly looked back. Fortunately, the white wave was not far away, and it was still approaching rapidly, so I immediately felt relieved. He will be here soon. The flying squirrel said with a smile. Get ready, this time, he completed the task alone. As ordered. The Navy saluted excitedly and ordered reloading again. Prepare. Chapter 147 Transfer. Looking down from the sky, a white line cuts across the blue sea at high speed, like a cutting knife cutting a piece of blue-colored paper. That's, what the hell? At the port, the squad leader who was about to order the firing of the gun stood frozen in place, his mouth twitching. The naval officer who was running towards this side also twitched at the corners of his mouth, looking at the fast-forwarding Yuhi-colored prawn speechlessly. And, Lois surfing behind prawns. Yeah. Stepping on the surfboard made by himself, Loya pulled the two long tentacles of the pelagic shrimp, and played with the waves. This is something he never even dared to think about before. As a standard clerk-style otaku, Loya's previous physical fitness does not need to be explained much. One word is chong. Two words are called weak chicken. Surfing or something, only exists in his imagination, even the beach he rarely goes to. There is no other reason, otaku, and he is not full of tendons, it is very shameful to go to the beach. And because of his baby face, the staff of the scenic spot reminded him more than once to pay attention to safety and not to go to deep water. Your little one is 1.7 meters tall, you bastard. But these became completely different when he came to the world of One Piece. The powerful enhancement of the dragon's body made him a more vigorous existence than a superhero. Now, let alone standing on the surfboard, he can even play some tricks. Such as a 720 degrees roundabout. A big windmill. It's just that Loya was having a good time, and his first transportation tool, the ocean shrimp, was very depressed. After all, whose owner will tug at your tentacles all day long? It hurts to do this. He also spins and jumps. He closed his eyes. I don't want to be ashamed. However, no matter how resentful it is, it has nothing to do with Loya, who is always exuding dragon might. Moreover, the inexplicable sense of glory that shrouded his heart made it even less able to conceive the idea of resistance. Ha ha ha, who Hansen, back. A figure in shorts was spinning at high speed in the air, pumping the air with a whimper. Then, with a thud, it fell heavily on the port slate, stepping on the slate to create a spider web-like crack, and the strong vibration was transmitted, causing the waves to stop for a moment. Quack quack. There was a rhythmic sound in the throat of the ocean shrimp, and he was also thankful for his liberation. One person and one shrimp, standing in the port of Malenford so flamboyantly, not caring about the sight of the people around. "Ah, Captain." A navy reminded his captain in a low voice, "Is it time to fire a shot?" "Ah, yes." The navy came back to his senses, couldn't help but couldn't look at the pair of strange creatures, and shouted loudly, "Prepare. Let go." Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. Two neat muffled sounds resounded across the coast. Seeing the neatly fallen greeting team, the flying squirrel suddenly surged into anger. "Loya. What are you doing?" At the moment of the shot, Loya regretted it. This is the headquarters of the Navy. Except for the fierce man with white beard, who would dare to be presumptuous here? Moreover, these bullets are not aimed at themselves, and they are not threatening. Hearing the roar of the flying squirrel, Loya shrank his head and smiled shyly. "Hey, if I said I didn't mean it, would you believe it?" "Trust you, you big-headed bastard." The flying squirrel drew his sword out of its scabbard, and slashed its head. "The average man shall die." While the harbor was full of chickens and dogs, a purple figure stood on the edge of the square, looking at this side with a smile on his lips. "You're finally back, Loya." At night, in the courtyard of the long-lost elite camp, the drunk Loya walked in the familiar garden, shaking every step of the way, as if she was about to fall to the ground in the next moment. Although everyone was very happy, the companions who hadn't seen for a long time all raised their glasses enthusiastically. But the heaviness that haunted everyone kept the atmosphere a little weird. Minnie sat alone the whole time, not joining any conversation. No one took the initiative to talk to her, so she was left to sit quietly until the banquet was over. Loya doesn't have many ideas. Since he has made a decision, don't regret it. Anyone has to pay for their actions, and he is no exception. However, Minnie's matter still has a clear turn for the better. How this matter will develop depends on what the person over there has to say. Hiccup. Loya hiccuped, suddenly stood still, and shouted to the empty courtyard. "Come out, Teacher Zephyr, it's just you and me here." Pat. The clogs stepped on the clean slate path, and Zephyr in a bathrobe stood abruptly from behind the rockery. His hair was a lot more gray than the last time we met, and his face was a little haggard. Looking at Loya, his eyes were very complicated. In addition to sadness, it is more of a helplessness. "Zephyr, teacher." Loya's heart was shaken. What kind of painful experience could make this Iron Man become so fragile? "Loya." Zephyr looked at his disciple carefully, and paused for a second at the scar on his face. Zephyr said in a low voice, "Minnie she." "I know, Teacher Zephyr," Loya whispered, interrupting Zephyr's words. Hum. The magic vibrated, and two chairs made of ice appeared in the courtyard. Loya sat on one of them and sighed. "Mr. Zephyr, there is something, I think it's better to tell you something." "Huh?" Zephyr looked at Loya blankly, then sat beside him. The bright moonlight sprinkled on the artificial lake, and the breeze blew through, causing the lake surface to tremble gently. The full moon also swayed, creating a circle of ripples. What rang in my ears was the chirping of insects. What you see in front of you is the beautiful scenery of the lake under the moon. What a picture of serenity and serenity. However, as Loya spoke, a strong suffocating aura suddenly erupted from Zephyr's body, destroying the tranquility. "What did you say? You let Jones go?" At this moment, Zephyr is no longer haggard and looks like an angry tiger, with high momentum. "Hey, I knew it." Loya helplessly looked at Zephyr in the rage and raised his hand to surrender. "Wait a minute, teacher, listen to me first, okay?" Zephyr's mouth opened and closed. After thinking for a while, he snorted heavily. "You better give me a sufficient reason, or I will personally send you into the Push City." Disobedience and disobedience, the problem is so serious. Yes, If you don't agree with my approach after listening, then you sit and don't do anything, and I will lock myself in. Loya said indifferently, and Zephyr almost couldn't hold back the rogue look. Implement their own characteristic education. However, Loya has continued to speak, and Zephyr has to let go of the desire to do it. At least, it's not too late to play after listening. Before I start to tell the reason, Mr. Zephyr, please tell me the truth. Loya suddenly put away the lazy look on his hippie smile and looked at Zephyr's eyes seriously. If there is a suitable reason, you would forgive Minnie. This question is related to Loya's lobbying success rate, and he can't take it seriously. The reason? Zephyr's eyes flashed, leaning to one side, looking at the sky full of stars. As long as it doesn't harm the interests of the Navy, it's not impossible for the old man to forgive her. Disgusting honesty. Loya despised a certain purple-haired old man in his heart, and he was obviously entangled, and he had to say something that would not harm the interests of the Navy. You clearly said that you are eager to turn around, okay. But now is not the time to dismantle Zephytai. Luoya paused, organized the language before continuing. Don't worry, it will not harm the Navy. On the contrary, this matter can be of great benefit to the Navy. Oh, great benefits. Zephyr was a little surprised at this moment. Loya is also half a veteran. He has experienced a lot of things and knows a lot about the twists and turns of the Navy. He can say that it has great benefits for the Navy, so even if it is a little exaggerated, there must be many benefits. Zephyr, who was interested, dragged the chair and moved closer to Loya. Come on, you continue to listen to me. Chapter 148 Loya's Plan. For the protection of the law, drunken sound plus more. 1/3. Actually, the reason why Jones obeys me is precisely because of Minnie's relationship. Loya said eloquently. Maybe you don't know, teacher, that Jones and Minnie are actually twins. What? There is such a thing? Zephyr widened his eyes and looked at Loya in disbelief. He had seen Jones' photos many times. The old man in the photo was actually Minnie's brother. Are you sure you're not kidding me? Although Zephyr didn't express his thoughts, his eyes clearly expressed doubts. So Loya took out the pocket watch Jones gave him from his arms, opened it and handed it to Zephyr. If you don't believe me, see for yourself, this is something Jones carried with him. The photo above was taken when they were 5 years old. Let me see. Zephyr took the pocket watch and carefully looked at the little man on the photo by the moonlight. Indeed, although it is very different from the current appearance, the consistency of the two people's faces can still be found in some details. Even if they are not twins, they are definitely related by blood. Do you believe it now? Loya shrugged and continued. I threatened Minnie's safety and forced Jones to do things for me. As long as we catch Minnie's line, Jones will not betray. Having said that, Zephyr closed his pocket watch and said worriedly, but this is not a long-term solution. Now every time I see Minnie, I feel very uncomfortable. Having said this, Zephyr sighed faintly. I thought you could give me a suggestion when you came back, and let me make up my mind on how to deal with Minnie's affairs, but I didn't expect you to give me another problem. Really? Well, who called you a teacher? Loya shrugged and spread his hands. As a teacher, you are either helping your disciples to wipe their butts, or they are on the way to help their disciples. Zephyr, you shut up now and I can't beat you. Ah, okay. The air fell into a moment of silence, and after a while, Loya coughed a few times and continued. As for Minnie, although she is indeed a spy placed in the Navy by the world government, she confessed to the rest of the spies immediately after her arrest. Moreover, she joined the elite battalion not long ago and has no access to any core intelligence. Great, it can be regarded as a meritorious deed. Quote. Hearing this, Zephyr raised his head, not knowing what he was thinking. After a long time, he said with a sad face, but even if I let her go, Sengoku won't be able to talk about it. Espionage is something that always needs to be taken seriously, even if you have Zephyr's protection and a good attitude of admitting your mistakes, and you are not put in jail, but Minnie's case can't be solved with a single sentence. Not to mention other things, Sengoku's old stubbornness will not pass. That is to say, Minnie was very honest, otherwise Zephyr wouldn't be able to protect her. Unless. Loya suddenly smiled lightly and raised his index finger. This is the reason why I want to let Jones go and control Jones. Mr. Zephyr, do you think that if there is a chance to completely destroy Chiwahai in front of Marshal Sengoku, it needs to be the price to pay as the release of a less serious criminal? What will he choose? Your Majesty's Chiwahai. Zephyr looked at Loya in shock. What do you mean? It's just as you guessed. Loya said in a deep voice. In the face of Zephyr, Luoya did not dare to say anything to completely destroy the Tianlong people. Throughout Zephyr's life, although old age has fallen into extremes, he wants to destroy the whole new world. But his enemies will always be pirates, not dragons. On the contrary, from the point of view of the Navy, Zephyr is an excellent Navy who will not be inferior to anyone. No matter how cruel and inhumane the Tianlong people are, it is impossible for him to agree with Loya's idea. Therefore, Loya had to put it another way and turned his attention to Chiwahai. This was already in his plan, and it was the right moment to hide his true thoughts. You must know that Chiwahai has always been a thorn stuck in the throat of the Navy, and it has not been a day or two to remove this thorn. If this is an opportunity, then the possibility of Sengoku releasing people will undoubtedly be much greater. I thought it was right, but... Absolutely not. Zephyr ruthlessly rejected Loya's proposal, making Loya unable to turn around. Why, isn't this a good thing? Loya asked strangely. Facing the question, Zephyr sighed deeply. Have you forgotten why the Chiwahai system was established? Of course it's because... Wait. Loya was thinking of refuting Zephyr with righteous words, and suddenly remembered something. Yes. Although Shichibukai is caught by the government, it will be removed by the government. It seems that the two sides are simply using each other and can be replaced at any time. But the fundamental reason for the establishment of this system is to check and balance the era of great sailing opened by Roger and to deter the sea. Up to now, the main role of Chiwahai is to fight against the four emperors of the New World, which are becoming more and more powerful. A long time ago, they did not have the resounding title of Four Emperors at that time, but they were only vaguely showing signs of being big, which was beyond the capabilities of the Navy. It was not until the establishment of Chiwahai under the king for many years that the name of the Four Emperors completely resounded in the sea. Then, in order to fight against the four powerful pirates at the natural disaster level, the strength of the selected Chiwahai is naturally not weak. Up to now, it has been listed with the same name as the naval headquarters and the Four Emperors, and is known as the three major forces of the great shipping route. Indeed, the appearance of Chiwahai made the Navy very embarrassed, eager to eat its flesh and sip its blood. But what makes people helpless is that the current Chiwahai is too big to fall off, and it is easier said than done to remove it. What's more, even if he is unwilling, Loya has to admit that Chiwahai has a huge contribution to maintaining the stability of the sea. Once destroyed, the whole world will be plunged into turmoil. Therefore, when the king descends into the seven martial seas, he cannot move. This cruel reality told Loya that he thought too little. For a while, the two were speechless. I don't know how long it took. Luoya suddenly raised his head and said firmly, since Chiwahai has such a huge influence, then I will replace it. What do you mean? Zephyr thought of this early, but he was waiting for Loya to speak. Jones is still expanding his strength according to the original plan, and I am behind the scenes to help him become bigger and stronger. First set a small goal to become Chiwahai, and then set a big goal to build a more powerful force than Chiwahai. Loya said and stood up excitedly. Since Marshal Sengoku has some scruples, then I will build a force stronger than Chiwahai, but controlled by the Navy. Until then, Chiwahai will be banned. The Navy can rest easy too. Quote. Zephyr stared blankly at Loya, who was talking eloquently, and suddenly burst out laughing. You are still so innocent. But it's very effective, isn't it? Luoya suddenly lowered his head and looked at Zephyr. Trust me, Teacher Zephyr, I will make that day come soon. Chapter 149 Prison Deathmatch. Navy Headquarters, Marshal's Office. After a night of careful discussion, Zephyr and Loya stayed up all night to draft a plan, and handed it over to Sengoku early the next morning. At first, Sengoku thought that Zephyr was here to discuss with him about the inauguration ceremony of Loya in a few days, so he kept chatting with him in a very relaxed tone. Until he saw this plan, for some reason, an uncontrollable impulse came to his heart. Snapped. Sengoku slapped the desk and asked solemnly, "Who else knows about this plan? This is so bold. Don't these two masters and apprentices know the seriousness of the problem? But the most urgent task is to determine the extent of the spread of the news. This kind of thing that clearly came to oppose the world government, once it is stabbed to it, the fate of Zephyr and Loya can be imagined. At ease, only Loya and I know about this matter. Oh yes, plus you, it's just the three of us." Zephyr drank a cigar and smoked to refresh his mind. What do you think of this plan? Very bold, but give it a try. Sengoku frowned, stroking the goat at his feet. Excluding the factor of point identity, Sengoku also has to admit the effect of this plan. As long as Loya can go all the way according to the steps in the plan, within 10 years. No, even shorter. It is possible to destroy the king's Chiwahai without bloodshed, and this behemoth still wears a pair of pants with the navy. But Zephyr, have you considered the consequences if something goes wrong? Consequences. Zephyr raised his eyelids and looked out the window. Looking out from the position of the marshal's office, most of the Malenfords can be seen. He didn't answer Sengoku's words, but said something seemingly unrelated. You know, Sengoku, from the day my son and wife left me, I've had suicidal thoughts more than once. Huh. Sengoku shuddered and looked up at Zephyr in shock. It's ridiculous, right? Zephyr laughed at himself, took a breath, let it stay in his mouth for a long time, and then slowly spit it out. But it's true, because I love them so much. Their departure makes me feel very hopeless. Zephyr said quietly, but fortunately, I still have you. He looked at Sengoku and smiled silently. It was you who helped me get out of those dark years, and it was you who allowed me to continue fighting. I also met those lovely new recruits, although they were annoyingly loud. I thought that was the case, my life would be like this, gradually dying out. But... creak. The cigar was suddenly clenched by Zephyr, and the hot cigarette butt was directly snuffed out by a pair of fleshy palms. But, they're dead too. Boom. An invisible aura erupted, and the entire office trembled slightly. Seeing Zephyr in this state, Sengoku could only sigh faintly. Already, there is no need to go on, Zephyr. I understand, really, I understand it all. While Zephyr was quiet, Sengoku slowly handed the plan to the goat at his feet, watching it chew and swallow bit by bit. Then, get ready. Sengoku lowered his head and said, I will discuss with the crane about the specifics. Thank you. Zephyr let go of his hand and let the cigar, which had turned into a pile of crumbs in his palm, slide down the palm of his hand. He knew how determined Sengoku had made this decision. The belief that he has always implemented and upheld in the past was broken by himself because of his own willfulness. You don't have to thank me, Zephyr. I have had a draft of this kind of thing before. Sengoku looked at Zephyr and said softly. But all of a sudden, Sengoku's face turned pale, and a transparent armament hockey was wrapped around his fist. But you have to remember that if any problem occurs, we will get out of it. And you, and Loya, will become the enemy of the entire navy. Do you understand? Ah, yeah, I know. After Zephyr finished speaking, the room fell into silence. I don't know how long it took. The crisp knock on the door awakened the two people in the room who were thinking alone. Sengoku sorted out his expressions, sat on top of the office, and said in a deep voice, Come in. Crunch. The door was pushed open. Zephyr's deputy, Ain, who had a relationship with Loya, walked in and saluted. Marshal Sengoku, Chief Instructor Zephyr, Elite Battalion Recruit Christopher Loya's upcoming prison deathmatch is ready, please instruct. Prison deathmatch. Sengoku and Zephyr smiled at each other, then said to Ain, Got it, get out. Yes. Ain answered energetically and turned to leave. When she came out and closed the door of the office, she suddenly realized a problem. What does it mean to appear on your own? Speaking of Marshall and Teacher Zephyr, don't you need to look at the deathmatch list beforehand? I've taken this list all the way and you haven't picked it up yet. Shall we follow the procedure? Holding the list farther and farther, Ain was in a trance. After Ain left, Sengoku smiled and invited Zephyr, let's go and see. I should say this right, Sengoku. Zephyr grinned and smiled, I'm Loya's teacher. As for Ain's selection of candidates, well, for the current Loya, is there any point in checking? This is the confidence that Loya brought to the two with Beard's Head and the former Emerald Street. The current Loya, under the general, is an invincible existence. Actually, I've always felt that there is absolutely no need for such a programmatic thing. It's bloated, cumbersome, and inefficient. You say that you spend so much military money every year on these little things, and the taxpayers will cry. Hearing the crazy words in his ears, the flying squirrel's face darkened. Shut up. Cut, it's a pain point to be poked, isn't it very uncomfortable? Next to the flying squirrel, Loya pressed his booger. Look at these soldiers, it's rare for them to take a few days off, and as a result, they were dragged over by you to be on duty. There is no time for family reunion. Quote. That, my home is in the east. Huh, the Navy who was on duty just opened his mouth, and Loya suddenly turned his face, and the other party immediately shut up. Flying Squirrel twitched the corners of his mouth as he watched, but did not answer. No matter how loud you are, do you dare to go against the orders jointly issued by Marshal Sengoku and Chief Instructor Zephyr? Anyway, as long as I watch you walk into the arena, my mission is complete. You won't be able to run until then. After Loya frightened the Navy, he continued to taunt and draw hatred. And the opponents you found for me are all transported by warships. Do you know how much a warship costs to go out to sea? It's not economical at all. Corruption, too corrupt. Phew, no, I have to hold back. The Marshal looked at me on the stage, Mr. Zephyr looked at me on stage, and the hateful pirates also watched me from the cage under the stage, so I couldn't leave a laughingstock. I will endure. The flying skier took a deep breath and inhaled, calming his heartbeat. This is not angry. I'm afraid I met a fake flying squirrel. Loya looked at the flying squirrel whose expression had calmed down with a bewildered expression, feeling a little numb. Well, it seems that this catastrophe cannot be escaped. I just don't know if I can take sick leave later. After all, the feeling of watching a monkey show with multiple people is really uncomfortable. A new recruit's death battle in prison, what are you arranging for so many people to do? Not working. If Loya wasn't the monkey, he certainly wouldn't feel that way. After walking along the somewhat dark passage for a long time, Flying Squirrel and Roja stopped in front of a dark and heavy iron door. Through the gap in the railing of the small window of the iron gate, you can see that on the other side of the gate is a huge circular flat. There are high protective walls all around, and hundreds of elite navies are patrolling like eagles with guns. When you're there, go in by yourself. Flying Squirrel said to Loya, his tone finally relaxed. If he stayed any longer, he was really afraid that he would stab Loya in the forehead. There is no need to say, mainly because of the sullenness of this road. Hey, really, what are you doing when you have nothing to do? Loya waved his hand unhappily, like chasing flies. Let's go, it's annoying to look at you. Chapter 150 Bloody Debut. Originally, Loya thought that he had completed the troubles of the Tianlong people, and the death battle in prison had nothing to do with him. The Flying Squirrel also told him that he could just go back to the headquarters to receive the military rank. However, Loya never thought that he would still fight to death in prison. Moreover, it was his dear teacher Zephyr who made him do this. There is no reason for him, it's just a show of strength. After graduating from the elite camp, in fact, they have passed the actual combat assessment. This is the last remaining step, just to show the muscles. First of all, this will allow the Navy to understand the strength of the graduates, so that they have no reason to question the origin of the other's rank, and at the same time make them proud and at ease. Behold, this is the monster of the elite camp. How powerful! Secondly, with the help of this behavior, we can clearly see the strengths and weaknesses of the graduates when they are fighting, and it is convenient for Zephyr and Sengoku to make the final assignment to them. Then the most important thing is to tell the pirates and thugs in the sea that another hungry wolf from the Navy has officially joined the stage of the sea. Therefore, the death battle in prison has never been a matter for the graduates themselves, but a matter for the entire Navy. With these reasons to support, Luoya naturally did not dare to refuse Zephyr's arrangement, biting his head and playing a monkey show. It's not because of Zephyr Justice's iron fist. Lol. In the stands, the old god Zephyr was there, chatting and laughing with Sengoku leisurely, and there was no trace of tension at all. As the person who knows Luoya's strength the most, he has 100 hearts for today's assessment. A little behind the two of them, Garp stood side by side with Crane, the general staff of the army, one smoking and the other eating senbei. However, unlike Lieutenant General Crane's curious expression, Garp was not at ease at the moment. His grandson ran off to be a pirate, and Sengoku didn't let him chase after him. It would be strange if he didn't make a fuss. Moreover, the thought that this time in the prison battle was the culprit that caused his grandson to escape to sea made Garp even more uncomfortable. Yes, so shameless. Garp firmly believes that Ace went out to sea as a pirate because he was stimulated by Luoya, and it was definitely not a problem of his own education. Absolute. If Luoya knew what Garp was thinking at the moment, he would probably suffer from internal injuries. The people of the Munch family are really wonderful. This brain circuit is simply ruining the three views. In addition to these big bosses, the 3 generals of the Navy and some lieutenant generals of the headquarters were also present, sitting opposite Sengoku and others. This time Luoya is in a prison battle. I don't know if the number of high-level officials here will come, but it is definitely unprecedented. In the stands, Kizaru leaned back in his chair doing nothing, turned his head to look at Huo Shaoshan behind him. Haoyao Yamanaka, how many games do you think Luoya-kun can pass? There are 10 battles in the prison battle. The more difficult it is, the shorter the rest time. Even the former Kizaru and others stopped in the 8th game when they graduated, and Akainu, who scored the best, fell in the 9th game. Well, Huo Shaoshan, who is always kind, took the cigar from his mouth and buckled his head. Actually, I haven't seen Luoya-kun for a long time, and I really don't dare to draw conclusions. But if you want to say this, Admiral Aokiji should have the most say. Saying that, Huo Shaoshan set his eyes on Kuzan. After all, General Qingzi hasn't slept at the moment, and he must be thinking about this very much. Ah, Lala, why did you talk about me all of a sudden? Kuzan pushed up the blindfolds on his eyes and turned his head with a half-smile. It seems that I was a little careless and was seen through pretending to be asleep. After all, when no one is asleep, they still shake their legs rhythmically, don't you think, Sakazuki? Kizaru turned his eyes to Akainu, who had a serious face throughout. Humph. Yellow monkey. Yes, this answer is very red dog. Cough cough. Kazuna coughed twice, decided to ignore Akainu, and turned to chat with Kuzan. So Kuzan, what are your guesses about your own disciple? Me, whatever you want. The grades don't matter. As long as he doesn't cause any trouble in the future, I'll be satisfied. Having said this, Kuzan fondly recalled that day at Sengoku's place. Something to see. Do you dare to believe that Luoya killed a Tianlong person? Fortunately, it is a member of the Athos family, otherwise he would really get into a lot of trouble. Huang Yuan was about to say something when suddenly, a dazzling sword light shot out from the passage below, cutting the thick iron gate in half. Then the castration continued unabated until it hit and shattered on the protective wall at the other end. I have an ominous premonition. Kizaru resolutely gave up what he wanted to say just now, teasing Kuzan. General Qingzi, your wish seems to be difficult to achieve. Kuzan took a deep breath, his arms and half of his face turned into ice cubes. Ah, I think so too. The camera returned to the passage, and in the thick dust, a figure with a sword stood silently there. But if you look closely, you will find that it is not he who wants to stand still like this. It was because of a thick layer of ice wrapped around him that made him unable to move. Damn it, didn't you just say some trash talk? You really want to kill me, Master Flying Squirrel? Loya tore himself off the wall and looked at the flying squirrel with a twitching mouth. Just now, the flying squirrel, who was stimulated by Loya's words, "I'm annoying when you look at you," drew his sword and shot, a 12-point smashing slash shot out, and flew close to his nose. Just a little bit, and there will be another scar on Loya's face. Fortunately, the flying squirrel was not Jones, and Loya could predict the danger when he started. A second before he drew his sword, Loya stepped back decisively and embedded himself in the wall of the passage before dodging the slash. Behind the ice layer, the flying squirrel had an angry look on his face. His eyes kept rolling, but he couldn't move his mouth at all when he wanted to say something. Hey, just stay with me, I'll go first. After all, Loya stepped through the broken iron door and appeared in the sight of a large group of people. Yo, colleagues, pirates and beasts, good afternoon, everyone. Most afraid, the air suddenly quiet. Ha ha ha, is there no one in your navy? This kind of fool can enter the elite battalion. Suddenly, a rough voice came out. Everyone's eyes moved in pursuit of the sound. In the corner of the Colosseum, a pirate with a face full of flesh sat in a cage, laughing loudly. Affected by his words, the rest of the pirates who were also locked in the cage also laughed wildly, with vulgar words and ridicule. Yeah, look at his appearance, the bamboo poles are thicker than him. Go back and eat milk, little brat. Are you the only one who wants to try the knife with this uncle? Dog * Navy, I'm %@ hash. Hearing the foul language in his ears, Loya's hippie smile froze. He increased the curvature of the cracked corners of his mouth, but he didn't smile. Tisk, why are you so upset all of a sudden? Well, the courage is good. It's a pity. Seeing the change in Loya's eyes, Kuzan silently burned a stick of incense for the leading pirate in his heart. Sure enough, the next moment. Bang! Loya's figure instantly disappeared in place, and when he reappeared, he was already behind the pirate. Although his mouth was sneering, he had always maintained his full attention, ready to launch armament hockey at any time in order to deal with the opponent's attack. But even so, he still didn't notice Loya's movements. It was not until a death crisis enveloped his heart that he noticed the slightest breath emanating from Loya. And this breath came from his back. What? Loya put his fist in through the gap in the cage, pressed it against his ugly head, and smiled. Profound truth. Biggest wheel, 6 kings absolute spear. Puff. Like the muffled sound of a watermelon that was full of moisture being stepped on, a large piece of pink and white yuhi exploded violently towards the surroundings, splashing all over the floor. The pirate disappeared from the world. Starting from his neck, a head has become unable to find even the size of a fingernail. Blood spurted out from the neck of the decapitated head, more than a meter high. PFF'd. The body fell, and the blood of the orangutan yuhi gushed out, leaving a huge pool of dazzling yuhi colors on the ground. Looking at the body that was still twitching, the faces of the rest of the pirates turned pale in an instant. Dead. With just one move, the great pirate Kefu Luo, who offered a reward of 100 million baileys, was killed. Gollum. The sound of swallowing continued to sound, and they were all frightened by Loya's powerful strength and ruthless means. Remember, you scumbags. Loya exuded a violent suffocation, and his face was cold. This is the Navy headquarters. It's not you, a place where you can run wild. Chapter 151 Carp, who is ready to do things? Please subscribe. Ask for a reward, ask for a ticket. Because of the experience of the scavenger pirates in Crisvia Island, Loya has no sympathy for these genuine thugs. And as he said, this is the Navy headquarters. This is the stage where he shows his strength. How can I tolerate this group of scum to disturb his performance? In the Colosseum, Loya's domineering speech shocked everyone and looked at him in a murmuring manner. Really, a qualified navy? Kizaru said with a low voice and a little deep meaning. Luoya suddenly killed the killer, even they almost didn't react. But after saying this, Kizaru's expression immediately became wretched again, and he raised his right hand and fanned at the corner of his mouth. It's so scary, so scary. The thought of this child going to the sea makes my legs go soft. This is something engraved in his bones, even in the face of a life-and-death crisis, Kizaru is still so wretched. Beside him, Akainu raised the brim of his hat rarely, with a hint of satisfaction flashing in his eyes. Humph. This is the right thing to do. With his extremely ruthless personality in order to implement justice, Loya's approach is undoubtedly very suitable for his taste. Just. Are you hiding something from me, Loya? Kuzan frowned and looked down. This is not like the usual you. For some reason, Kuzan felt a sudden uneasiness in his heart. He hadn't had this feeling for a long time. He didn't know what happened, but he was sure that there was something he didn't know. This kind of pain without a clue made him, who was used to being cold, felt a burning anxiety after a long absence. On the other side of the stand, Sengoku and Zephyr looked at each other, nodded slightly, and then quickly looked away. This scene was imprinted in Lieutenant General Crane's eyes, and she couldn't help but think of the matter that Sengoku secretly approached her to discuss yesterday, and suddenly sighed faintly. Loya, what a nice guy. However, next to Lieutenant General Crane, Garp suddenly became serious. If I remember correctly, Ace said that he would beat up Loya, right? Garp thought while rubbing his chin. In other words, is he going to take the initiative to trouble Loya? But judging from Loya's performance just now. Hold the grass. No, I still have to go and get Ace back. After making up his mind, Garp glanced quietly at Sengoku in front of him and stepped back little by little. However, with Garp's status, he is undoubtedly watched by many people, and a little movement can attract a lot of attention. Huh, Lieutenant General, he turned his head and asked strangely, Cap, where are you going? The assessment has just begun. Ah, this is it. Looking at Sengoku, who had turned around because of the noise, Garp pretended to be stunned and touched the back of his head. Yeah, I ate too many donuts just now. I'm a little sick to my stomach, I'm going to the toilet. Oh, that's it. Come back quickly. Loya may be the first recruit in the history of the Navy to pass 10 exams. This is an important moment, and as a naval hero, don't miss it. Lieutenant General Crane had no doubts about him, because the decades of experience with him told her that Garp was not a liar. The Munch family doesn't have that gene. Yes, I know, I'll be right back. Garp said haha, and ran away in a hurry. I always feel that there is something wrong, old guy Garp. Looking at Garp's back, Admiral Crane was in a rare confusion. However, after all, the opponent is Iron Fist Garp, a dignified naval hero. There is nothing to doubt. Lieutenant General Crane just thought about it for a while and ignored it. Sengoku also acted as Garp's erratic personality, and seeing that the Crane didn't respond, he turned his head and ignored it. When Keifu Luo fell, a stream of blood was sprayed on Loya's face, and the blood-colored scar was even more fresh against the blood, adding a bit of unspeakable murderous aura to him. Standing beside the dead body, Loya wiped the blood on his face with his thumb and smiled silently towards the stand. This is just the beginning, and he will make even greater sacrifices for his future plans. Cough, let's start the assessment. Sengoku coughed and gave the order. Then, I'll leave for a while. Huo Shaoshan stood up from his position, scolded his colleagues around him, and then walked to the center of the Colosseum with a moon step. Next, Christopher Loya, the third stage of the graduation assessment, the death battle in prison, start now. Standing in the center of the field, Huo Shaoshan didn't talk nonsense, and directly announced the beginning of the assessment. After finishing speaking, he came to the entrance of the passage where Loya came to stand alone, serving as the referee and preventing the pirates and beasts from escaping. But when he saw the flying squirrel frozen into an ice sculpture, the corners of his mouth twitched unconsciously. Bang! The fist wrapped in armament hockey slammed on the ice layer, and the ice layer, which was deliberately weakened, shattered and rescued the flying squirrel. Cough cough, cough cough. Only 2 small holes were left to pant, and the flying squirrel had already held back Yuhi's face, and coughed violently as soon as it broke free. Cough, this bastard. Hey, wait. Huo Shaoshan stopped Flying Squirrel from rushing up with his sword and said helplessly, Flying Squirrel, the assessment has already started. Well. Clang. The flying squirrel put the knife into the sheath heavily, giving up the idea of chasing and killing Loya. Sengoku and the others are watching on stage. Now is not the time to do this. Indeed. Everyone is looking at Loya, they are either nervous or excited. But without any exception, all eyes are locked on this, the strongest recruit in the Navy who completely destroyed Crisvia Island, destroyed Emerald Street, and killed the Dark World giant, Hunter Jones. It's a real crowd pleaser. Whoa. He tore off the cold clothes on his body and threw it away. Loya was naked on the upper body, and the spiral blue pattern added a bit of mystery to him. Magical vibration, the unique armament hockey appeared on the fist, like blue lightning piercing the night sky. It looked extremely dangerous. Facing the gazes of hundreds of people calmly, Loya grinned and shouted loudly, the show starts. Please wait and see. Boom. The gong that announced the start was struck heavily, and the crisp sound of the gong echoed over the Colosseum. Fire Yamanaka will take a deep breath and shout loudly, first round, start. Click. Following General Yamanaka's words, the lock of a cage fell. A fierce beast like a porcupine and a cheetah rushed out the moment the lock was opened, and the direction was the wall behind him. Don't forget, Loya exudes a suffocating dragon power all the time. If you don't turn it on actively, except for those with a keen sense of power, it is this group of animals with an IQ of 9 that is most aware of it. That is not pure momentum and killing intent, but belongs to the dragon, the pride of standing at the top of the food chain and looking down at all beings. So facing Loya in the center of the field, the beast did not hesitate and chose to escape. Its claws can tear through the hard iron, and it is not a problem to climb up along the protective wall. The plan is beautiful, but Roha won't let the prey he's targeting escape. Call out. The ice spear flew out with a piercing whistling, and accurately pinned the beast that had just climbed to a height of a few meters in the corner of the wall. The latter whimpered a few times in despair, and then went silent, drooping his limbs under the influence of gravity. Ice attribute ability. Looking at the ice spear that exudes a chilling air, the faces of the 2 pirates who were used as the test stone were extremely ugly. Natural ability person. No, Kuzan is there. Eudemon's type fruit, or a special effect of superhuman type. Damn it, what the hell is it? But no matter what the answer is, the strength and accuracy of this ice spear are no different from ordinary sniper rifles. And combined with the naval sextile used by the opponent just now, it is conceivable that the strength of the enemy is terrifying. Looking at the expressions of all the pirates, Luoya's evil charm, no mistake, smiled madly. Come here, just run, if you can leave alive, I will lose. Chapter 152 Can You Be Gentle? The final test for elite battalion members to graduate, prison deathmatch. As the name suggests, it is to let graduates and enemies fight each other in a limited environment until the other side falls or dies. Even if Zephyr would be there every time to watch the performances of the disciples, it could not be said that it was absolutely safe. In fact, the number of serious injuries and even fatalities has remained high on this test. Sometimes they know that they can't hold on, but graduates still choose to continue to challenge, then they will face a very dangerous situation. Sometimes, retreating when faced with difficulties is the right way. This test is divided into 10 games, and the opponents in the first 4 games are some raptors. For most people, these beasts are very dangerous, and death will come if they are not careful. But for Loya, most of the Sea Kings can only tremble and crawl in front of him, waiting to die. So, boom. Loya's figure swayed, and the whole person suddenly turned into a black line, flashing across the Colosseum. When he reappeared, he was accompanied by a cloud of Yuhi-colored blood that exploded. That was his opponent in the third match, a tiger no smaller than Gang Ying, the last sight he left in this world. Whoa! The shredded meat splattered all over the sky, but soon began to fall under the action of gravity. However, before they touched Loya, they were immediately condensed by a cold air, turning into countless tiny ice crystals, which clacked on Loya's protective ice armor. Standing in a large pool of blood, Loya stretched. Next. In the distance, Huo Shaoshan was smoking a cigar, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. Violent, domineering, ruthless. At this moment, Loya gave him an indescribable feeling of oppression, which was like when he was young, facing the big pirates at sea. Really, too powerful. Whether it is fruit ability or close combat, Roha has reached a level that he cannot match. Even his most powerful armament Haki is bleak in front of Loyana's special domineering. I'm afraid, you will be killed if you meet each other. Huo Shaoshan couldn't help but take a look at the strength gap between the two sides and smiled bitterly. Once upon a time, the little guy who failed to compete with himself in Heathville has reached this level. This is really, the waves beat the waves. Why? Huo Shaoshan and Flying Squirrel looked at each other silently, sighing with some sadness and some joy. But although shocking, he is after all a battle-hardened might man. After being surprised, he cleared his throat, calmed down, and continued to say, the third game, pass. The fourth test, start. In the auditorium of the grandstand, the members of the elite battalion arrived late, and as soon as they arrived, they saw Loya, who was naked on the field, beat the tiger into a bloody mist, and the corners of his mouth twitched. It's too brutal. Aludo touched the goosebumps on his hands and found an empty seat to sit down. Tony, you said, you want to challenge Loya tomorrow. Well, I changed my mind and stopped challenging. Tony was silent for a while, and the words he said almost made Aldo choke himself to death. Cough. What did you say? Is this still that crazy challenge, Tony? You must know that after Hans's death, Tony, who knew that he was not strong enough, was desperate, squeezed his potential in a way that could be called self-mutilation, and practiced desperately, never slackening. So far, except for Loya, the rest of the elite camp has been challenged by him more than once. Today everyone will be late because they are waiting for him to finish his cultivation. But is this Tony who gave up the planned challenge? Didn't you say that your Shirakendo breakthrough has reached a new level? It has become much stronger. Aldo asked strangely, and what kind of moves you developed to defeat Loya? What's the name of the one I hurt so much? The trick that hurts you is called elephant dance. Tony glanced at Aludo speechlessly, and then explained the reason. That said, the problem is that my current armament Haki adds a unique trick. Shangwu just barely broke your defense, and it still takes a certain amount of time to charge up. Do you think I have the time to prepare for Loya? Ah, that's it. Aludo was stunned, remembering the big tiger who was running all over the ground and was instantly blown up, and shook his head frankly. No, before that, you will definitely killed. That's not the end. I'm a fighting lunatic, but I'm not a fool. Tony glared at him angrily. What does it mean to be killed? Please be polite. At this time, Simon, who was late, sat beside Arudo and asked, I heard someone being beaten to death as soon as you came here. What are you talking about? Simon. As the second son of the Weston family, Simon, who also has a strong ability to analyze and collect, is second only to Loya in the elite camp. When he came, everyone greeted him. After listening to Arudo's narration, Simon took out a bunch of small cards from Kabuto and picked out the one with Loya's full-body photo. In other words, Loya's movement speed is so fast that you can't see it clearly. It's really a terrifying growth rate. As he spoke, he took out a Yuhi pen and painted a grid representing speed on the back of the card. Yuhi. A few months ago, I remember Tony, you could still capture his movements, I thought. Ah! At this moment, a scream interrupted everyone's movements. The cry was so terrifying that those who heard it were in tears and those who saw it were sad. What happened? You kill pigs. Everyone looked up at the Colosseum, trying to find out. On the field, Loya looked coldly at the pirate who was crying non-stop in front of him. If you don't shut up, I will really tear you in two. Woo! The pirate suddenly stopped crying and covered his mouth tightly, not daring to make another sound. That's right. Loya's face was icy cold, and an ice spear appeared in his hand. Obviously just to scare the other party, but he didn't expect him to cry. He cried. You will discredit the group of pirates like this, okay? However, since you are here. An ice spear with a length of about 1 meter quickly condensed and formed, wantonly exuding icy cold air. Either, you will be killed by me, or you will kill yourself. As he spoke, Loya threw the ice spear and threw it in front of the pirate. From the day you became a pirate, you should have known that you would end up like this. Loya said, this is the path you chose by yourself, so you have to bear the corresponding consequences yourself. It's not that you can be forgiven by crying a few words. But, I don't want to be a pirate either. The man said with a choked sobs. If you live, who will live with your head on your trouser belt? It's all because of the abominable gold in the sky that ruined my family. My sons starved to death. Am I not a pirate to live on? With these words, the Colosseum fell silent for a while. Yeah, he's really saying something that happens quite often. Although there are many pirates in this world who, like Luffy, simply go out to sea for their dreams. But more than that, it was forced by life, and they went to sea only when they couldn't survive, hoping to make a living and be a full-fledged guy. These people are full of resentment and anger from the very beginning, and their methods are often more brutal than ordinary pirates. Because they can't survive, they have to take revenge on society. It's that simple. Behaviorally, they don't deserve to die. But looking at the root cause, doesn't the Navy have no responsibility at all? Loya couldn't help but think of the classic line at the end of the movie, Wu Zhuangyuan Su Kier. The number of beggars in this world is not decided by me, but by you, the Emperor. As long as the people live and work in peace and contentment, and everyone has food, who would be a beggar? This situation is also common in the op world. If, like flamingos and sand crocodiles, there were fewer people who took over the mountains as kings and saved people's lives, and there were no pain and no ruin, how many people would be willing to give up everything and become pirates? How many people would be willing to give up their peaceful life and go wandering at sea if they didn't have to pay the terrifying amount of gold in the sky? Is it really for the so-called One Piece? To be the next Roger? Do not. They are just for treasure and fame. More simply, they are just there to live. Wandering on the edge of life and death again and again, but simply to live. Ridiculous, but true. What will you do, Loya? In the stands, Zephyr stared at the silent Loya and muttered to himself in a low voice. That's how it is. Loya sighed deeply. There was something stuck in his throat, and he wanted to vomit but couldn't spit it out. Raising his right hand slightly, he snapped his fingers. Laugh. The ice spear on the ground suddenly bounced up, streaked a straight line in the air, and in a blink of an eye, it went straight through the pirate's chest. I wish you a good pregnancy in your next life, and a good journey all the way. Chapter 153 Reason to Fight. Seeing the man fall down with resentment on his face, the Marines on the field were speechless for a long time, and the surroundings were silent. Are we really right? This idea popped into the minds of many soldiers. Isn't what they protect exactly what they destroy? Why is this the case? Have we been doing it wrong all the time? Feeling the changes in the eyes of the people around him, before Huo Shaoshan could announce the result, Loya said directly, next, let's start. Then, in the surprised eyes of everyone, Loya picked up the clothes on the ground and put it on the pirate's head. Perhaps, you are doubting your own worth and significance. But please don't forget, no matter what tragic experience he has, he is still a vicious pirate. Loya slowly stood up and slowly scanned the entire Colosseum. The invisible and intangible long way spread out, causing everyone to look at him and listen to him quietly without daring to disturb him. Everyone has to pay for his actions. He committed a crime, so he was punished. God is always fair and will not take sides because of anyone's cry. He has his reasons. Then, those who were punished by him, what about those who took their lives? Did they deserve to die? Quote, "The Navy is always just. Our actions are absolutely just. There is no need for any doubts about this." Having said that, Loya's eyes stayed on the stance. Kuzan's contemplation, Kizaru's wretchedness, and Akainu's anger were all in sight. Afterwards, he looked back at Zepha. "My teacher, Chief Instructor Zepha, once said that there will never be anything perfect in this world. But as long as we stick to our heart, we can make the world we yearn for become more distant from us." Close. Indeed. The soldiers around came back to their senses and clenched the guns in their hands. Nothing is perfect. Maybe our actions today hurt some people while saving some people, but as long as we keep going, a bright future will surely come. At that time, we don't expect that there will be no pirates like him who are forced to go out to sea again, but it will be much better. That's why we fight. From the 4th round, the difficulty of the assessment has undoubtedly increased a lot. The first 3 battles with beasts were dangerous, but beasts did not have as much fun as humans. Beast fighting is more head-to-head, sharper than Kiba's sharp claws, and the corresponding test is the basic ability of graduates. From the 4th game onwards, the opponents of the graduates are the pirates who crossed the sea in the past and were imprisoned in the advanced city. These pirates are either domineering grandmasters, or have strange abilities. Anyway, they are not good things, and the bounties are almost always starting at 100 million. "Do you need a break, Loya?" Huo Shaoshan looked at Loya with a complicated look and asked. Starting from the 4th game, Loya has only a short 5-minute break after each game. In that case, although it is still divided into sessions, it is no different from the wheel battle. No. With the bonus of the dragon's body, Loya's resilience is unparalleled. In those battles just now, the opponent's strength was too weak, and it was not even a warm-up for him. Hearing Roha's answer, Yamanaka will also recall Roha's previous battle, shook his head with a wry smile, and said, "Okay, I'm overthinking it." Then, the 5th game. Ahem. Skip. Game 6, start. The opponent in the 5th game, before he had time to come on stage, was smashed to pieces by Loya's 6-king gun. At the beginning of the 6th game, this time Loya's opponent performed much better than the man just now, because he is a pirate with self-principles. Even if he knew he was going to die, he didn't have the slightest intention of giving up. This made Loya look at him a little higher, not choosing to kill him directly, but suppressing his strength and showing his strength. Boom, boom. The sound of fists colliding continued one after another, and from time to time there was a crisp symphony of gold and iron, which was the armament hockey of the two fighting against each other. The strength is good, but the speed is too slow. Even in the middle of a fierce battle, Loya still has the strength to comment on it. On the other hand, the more the pirate slapped, the more ugly it became. Powerful. It is too strong. Even if his hands were numb, and the piercing pain came from his forearm bones, he had nothing to do with Loya. What's more, Loya didn't even frown. In the stands, those soldiers and fellow elite battalions thought so too. They couldn't help but put themselves in Loya's position to simulate what would happen if they met this pirate. However, apart from Aludo, no one dared to claim to be able to defeat the opponent. The powerful and heavy fist, every time it was punched, the air was pumped and snapped. Every time they collided, a wave of air would splash, pushing away the dust under their feet. It seems like two beasts from ancient times. They are extremely powerful, and they have amazing destructive power in every move. Tony clenched his sword tightly, watching Loya fight with his opponent a little unwillingly. Has the gap been widened so much? Aludo was excited to fuel Loya, then lowered his head and asked, "Tony, did you say something just now?" No, just concentrate on watching the show. Indeed, for Loya, this battle is all about acting. Don't you want to know how strong I am? Then take a good look. Even if he only used physical techniques in 6 forms, and only used 1 or 2 layers of strength, this big pirate who once rewarded 300 million yuan could no longer resist. It's almost there, Loya said softly, dodging the opponent's fierce attack with shaved. Huh, you. The pirate was just about to say something, when suddenly a flower appeared in front of him, and a sharp pain spread throughout his body, and he flew out heavily. Bang! 6 Kings Absolute Gun changed Chongfeng. Roha, who reappeared in everyone's sight, stepped forward with a lunge and punched forward with one hand. Then he stood up and rubbed his wrist. Cut, I haven't used this trick for a long time, and I almost slapped my hand. But, he raised his eyelids and looked at the direction the pirate flew out. That's enough. Boom, boom, boom. The crisp sound of bone cracks connected into one piece, densely packed like fried beans in an iron pan. The pirate who hit the protective wall vomited a mouthful of blood, flipped the Byakugan and fell into the wall. The kind that can't be buckled. After a few breaths, the pirate tilted his head and gasped. The 6th game, Loya wins. Huo Shaoshan announced the result loudly, and suddenly there was thunderous applause. Good fight. It's amazing, Luo Ya-san. Good job. Hearing the cheers from his comrades and colleagues in his ears, Loya's heart has been a little heavy since just now. He raised his fist and shouted, Next! Next! Almost all the navy were neatly attached, and the sounds gathered together to form a sound wave visible to the naked eye. It is a scene where the dust in the air is driven by the airflow and only appears under the illumination of the light. In the stands, Tony suddenly stood up, turned and walked out without looking back. His movement was so sudden that Aludo didn't regain his senses for a while, and the shouting in his mouth stopped. Hello, Tony, where are you going? I'm going to practice. Chapter 154 Major General Mattis. Everyone in the elite camp more or less guessed Tony's idea, and no one stopped him. After he left, Simon said softly, although Loya has been very relaxed so far. However, starting from the 7th game, the generals of the headquarters acted as Loya's opponents. Those are not some easygoing guys. As a member of a veteran naval family, Simon knows a lot of information that others don't know. General of the headquarters, my God, who can be their opponent except Loya? Aludo widened his eyes and took a deep breath. Although there are countless admirals in the Navy, those who can serve in the headquarters are all elites among the elites. Elite camps teach, they will. Whether it is domineering, swordsmanship or physical skills, he is skilled in control, and his abilities are comprehensive and powerful. How easy is it for a new recruit to defeat them? Even Aludo, who has a thick line, is a little horrified when he hears these 4 words. Yeah, it's very difficult, Simon said with a wry smile. So the rule set by the prison deathmatch is that you can graduate after passing the 4th game. Because in each of the 4 games after that, the opponent's strength is a geometric level. Is improving. Quote. Loya's opponent in the 4th game is just an ordinary big pirate with a reward of 30 million Baileys. But the opponent in the 5th game that he killed in advance is the villain of 100 million Baileys. The 6th game, more a guy with 300 million Baileys. Even in the New World, he is still an all-powerful character. But this is not the last. Simon recalled the information he saw at home, his tone sighed. Do you know how the last 4 games were set up? How did you set it up? For some reason, Arudo suddenly felt as if he had discovered something extraordinary. The companions around also perked up their ears, waiting for Simon to answer. In the expectation of everyone, Simon said slowly, 7th game, opponent, one of the major generals of the headquarters. The 8th game, opponent, one of the lieutenant generals of the headquarters. The 9th game, the opponent, the 3 lieutenant generals of the headquarters. Gollum. A large voice of swallowing saliva sounded, and everyone in the elite camp was dumbfounded. Lieutenant General. 3 more. The Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters is the true backbone of the Navy, and all of them have experienced hundreds of battles. Don't look at the flying squirrels, and they are not famous in the original book, but in this real-op world, the reputation of the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters can be described as a huge sea. Dare not to bird them, there are only so many fingers to break. And what corresponds to this reputation is their formidable strength. You must know that the strength gap between the Admiral of the Navy and the Vice Admiral of the headquarters is very different, and there have always been only 3. Naturally, it is impossible for them to do everything. Therefore, almost most of the tasks that require high-end combat power are actually solved by these lieutenant generals. Their strength can be imagined, and they can't hold the scene if they are not strong. Just a recruit, how easy is it to defeat them? Do not. This is simply impossible, Aludo exclaimed excitedly. Teacher, why did he set this up? No one can pass the 7th game. Hey, you really guessed wrong. Simon said with a smile. Actually, not only did someone pass, but more than one. Who is it? Everyone pricked up their ears, waiting for Simon to break the news. Cough. Simon cleared his throat, and before a group of people impatiently wanted to beat someone, he decisively said, before breaking the news, I have something to tell everyone. Actually, starting from the 8th game, if you can persist in the hands of the Lieutenant General for half an hour without failing, you will pass. Oh, it turns out that, then there is still a possibility. A ghost. That's the Lieutenant General. The monsters of the Grand Master of Domineering Gas and Swordsmanship. Although it is not the kind of monster at the general level, it is absolutely impossible for a recruit of them to persist for half an hour. But the more this is the case, the more curious Arudo and the others are, who can pass this terrifying test. Simon saw that the preparation was almost done, so he began to break the news. Actually, you all know these people. General Kizaru, he lasted until half an hour to pass the 8th game, and then abstained. Lost to Lieutenant General Shuguan and stopped in the 8th game. General Akainu, defeated Lieutenant General Shuguan in the 8th game, persisted for 10 minutes in the 9th game, and declared defeat. Quote. Everyone took a breath. This record is really dazzling. Aludo shook his head with a wry smile and looked at his fists. Actually, I have been thinking about how weak our group is. Called the shame of the elite camp, the weakest one. It seems that it is indeed weak. Simon was startled, and then his eyes darkened. Hey, why not? However, he looked up at Loya in the center of the field and grinned. But so what, this year, we have the strongest recruit. Ice Dragon Loya. We are the weakest term, however. We are also the strongest. Affected by Simon's smile, the rest of the people also smiled casually. Yeah, we still have Loya. By the way, Simon, the first 9 games are so terrifying, the opponent in the 10th game. It shouldn't be. Aludo was startled by talking, and his eyes suddenly widened. Ah, yeah. The opponent in the 10th game is the general. But, Loya's card flipped up and down on Simon's finger. However, no one has ever reached that point, let alone whether they can last for 30 minutes. Undefeated. In the arena, listening to the discussion of Simon and others, Loya also smacked his tongue slightly. What a horrible group of people. If it weren't for the appearance of the current 3 generals, these last few tests would be completely funny. However, when he saw the opponent who came up to the 7th game, Loya was slightly taken aback, and no longer had time to pay attention to these things. Because this so handsome. Although the body is a little deformed, the face is really handsome. The high bridge of the nose, clear eyes, and a sinister smile all exude a suffocating charm. But no, I'm a straight man. Shaking his head, Loya threw these weird thoughts out of his mind with a look of alertness. But within 3 seconds, he was defeated again. No, I can't look at his face. In the stands, Kuzan's eyes flashed with surprise, and he said with a smile, it turned out to be Mattis, didn't he flee to the East China Sea for refuge? When did he come back? This sentence was said to the lieutenant generals behind him. As generals, it was impossible for Akainu and Kizaru to pay attention to the movements of a major general. He came back a few days ago, because the Athos family doesn't have the energy to deal with him now, so they dared to come back. Lieutenant General Stoloberg replied to Kuzan, and he said with a blank face, "Otherwise, with Mata don't say it back, I'm afraid he still won't dare to contact us." Speaking of this, Stolberry shook his high head. Dare to grab slaves from the Tianlong people, he is really stupid. Well, who called him a lolicon? Kuzan said, half-smiling. Ha ha ha. Everyone laughed neatly, and Kizaru curled his lips and suddenly realized, oh, so it's him, the little guy who was targeted by the Athos family. I heard that their family also expelled him from the family because of this incident. I didn't expect him to be dead. After all, his fruit ability is a bit special, but it's still very good for life. Kuzan said something and looked at Mattis, who looked like a gorilla in the audience. Well, I can't stand it no matter how many times I watch it. It's so hot. Chapter 155 Handsome Fruit. Mattis Lan, a rear admiral who made his name in history. Well, whether it's personal reasons or what he's done, it's true. But even though he said it so solemnly, Mattis was still a little-known ordinary major general. After all, this involves the privileged class of the Tianlong people. As the navy of the world government, few people have the courage to discuss him at will. So he doesn't know much about him. However, as long as you know the reason, you can't help but sigh in your heart. Lolicon, that's scary. Mattis was just an ordinary navy before, although he was a rear admiral of the navy headquarters, and his family background was also a small noble. But in the navy headquarters, there are countless guys like him, just like Simon, the second son of the Weston family, so it's not surprising. But if you have to look for something special, you can still find it. Because, he's a lolicon. The kind carved into the soul. The leader of the poor breast god cult of the Navy headquarters, the ultimate gentleman who was punished 3 times and almost got fired 3 times and never changed his mind. This is a joke, although the management of the headquarters is strict, but Sengoku does not care about these small things. However, with that incident, the name of Mattis, lolicon, really entered the ears of a group of bigwigs. That is in Chambord, he contradicted the Tianlong people for a little girl. Yes, because of Loli, he did not hesitate to provoke the tyrannical Draco. The cause of the incident is unknown, only that the two fell in love with the little slave at the same time. As a Tianlong person, the guy from the Athos family is naturally arrogant to force Mattis to make concessions. Because in their eyes, the entire navy is a dog they keep, how dare the dog rob the owner? It just doesn't make sense. However, as a gentleman, how could Mattis allow such a lovely Loli to fall into the hands of the Draconians, and the encounter she would face at that time can be imagined. So, Mattis stole Loli while the other party was not paying attention. Yes, it was stolen. With the Tianlong people present, would the slave owner dare to sell the little girl to him? So the only way to go is to steal. Loli, that is justice, said Mattis, who was wearing the cape of naval justice. Then, in order to avoid the pursuit of the Tianlong people, Mattis went out to avoid disasters and drifted in the East China Sea. This drift was half a year. Just like Luoya and Zephahui accepted the difficulties of Tianlong people for the position of Lieutenant General of the headquarters, once the position reached the General of the headquarters, even Tianlong people did not dare to be too presumptuous. This gave Mattis a chance to take refuge. Otherwise, with the temperament of the Tianlong people, they would have been ordered to make friends through the 5 old stars. Hearing the discussion in the stands clearly, Loya rolled the eyes of the dead fish and stared at the gorilla with beautiful eyes and strong back. Oh no. Great eights. Just looking at Mattis' face, no one can question it, but his figure. Tisk, what a disgusting muscle dude. Ouch. Are you Loya? Mattis stood opposite Loya and said with a smile, I heard that you are very strong. The handsome and charming I am definitely not your opponent. Ooh, so wait a moment. And please show mercy. So, can we not learn huskies? Loya complained and put on a posture. Let's start. Ow, I don't want this fetish. Ow, it's the will of the universe. Mattis only wore a thumb-wide black suspender t-shirt, and his body was almost unrecognizable as a human being. As high as a basketball, the drum muscles are full to the brim. As soon as the words fell, Mattis kicked his footsteps, his whole body trembled, and he launched the attack first. Look at my handsome, flying kick. In the air, an inexplicable dangerous aura quickly condensed under Mattis' feet, and it became pitch black in the blink of an eye. In stark contrast to his slightly yuhi cheeks, one yuhi and one black. Sure enough, calling out the name of the move in the air is such a shame. But to win, this sacrifice is worth it. Looking at his muscles, I guessed that he would use armament hockey. I didn't expect it to be like this. Looking at Mattis, who was approaching fast, Loya sank a little, and the ice armor on his arm quickly expanded and bulged. Become a half-human tall frost fist. Then punch it out. I hit. Bang. The air exploded, and Mattis endured the severe pain in his calf and flexibly rolled over to the ground. You still give in. The difference in strength between the two sides is too great. Just a little bit of force, the other's bones made a crisp sound. If Loya's strength is used a little more, Mattis' foot will definitely be broken. So Loya simply let the other party admit defeat, so as not to really hurt him later. After all, King Kong Barbie is shocking enough. UTM is still a handsome guy. This is very gay, is it gay? My eyes are going blind. However, before Loya's words were finished, the opponent's next action made Loya stop talking. I saw Mattis posing as a bodybuilder, with his fists clenched and pulled on his crotch, and then his chest muscles shook. Ouch! What a handsome kick, I'm on fire. If only talking about it, Loya only thinks that he is insane. But the soaring momentum can't scare people. In this short period of time, Mattis's strength has rapidly increased by a lot. I'm going, the bigger the stronger the shaking am. Looking at Mattis's blue-veined muscles, Loya complained in surprise, and then... whoosh! With the second stage of acceleration, Loya came to Mattis almost instantly, and punched again. It doesn't matter what kind of fruit you are, I don't believe that you will not lie down if you punch it with 30% strength. Boom! It's a meat-to-meat collision. That violent crash made Kiba sour. With one punch, the slates under Mattis' feet were cracked, and the soil was like flour on the table, flying high up with the vibration. But he actually withstood. Aludo almost choked on his own saliva again, looking at the audience in shock. Simon explained in a timely manner. Ah, yes, Loya is a little underestimated. Major General Mattis, fruit ability is a handsome fruit, a superhuman fruit. Apart from making his abilities are this augmentation effect. Quote. Every time he attacks and is attacked, as long as he truly thinks he is handsome and charming, that fruit can enhance his strength a little bit, and the specific effect depends on the depth of his self-identification. This effect is similar to his. Well, that kind of honey and confidence work together, and they complement each other perfectly and are a match made in heaven. At the end of the sentence, Simon's expression became very strange. This is really, strange fruits, strange people, they can collide with each other, it's a miracle, no, a miracle. Aludo. So it's really pervert. Chapter 156 I have a sentence MMP I don't know if I should say it or not. When Simon explained to Aldo, Mattis, whose face was full of yuhi, roared, and pushed out the ice fist that was stuck in the chest muscles, and at the same time, a majestic momentum surged up. Loya's 30% strength is not easy, he even has the illusion that his heart is broken. But even so, he still withstood the attack and did not fall. Ouch! What a handsome one. I really am the most handsome. Shave. Loya left his side in 6 poses, the corners of his mouth twitching. Fuck, isn't this a Super Saiyan? The more you fight, the stronger you are. If you really get stronger and stronger, doesn't that mean that the opponent's strength will soon catch up with you? This is a fart. However, after thinking about it, Loya threw this guess out of his mind. Although Simon has not revealed the news yet, if the opponent's fruit ability can really achieve that effect, then Mattis will never appear in the 7th game. The position is definitely not just a major general. But since he appeared here, it means that his strongest strength has not yet reached that level. In other words, the opponent's increase is capped. And this upper limit will soon be reached. The best way to deal with it now is to kill him with one hit before his strength reaches the top. Ow, look at my handsome charge. At this time, Mattis, who knew that his ability was easy to be found out, roared, lowered his center of gravity, and rushed towards Loya. He has to hit Roja hard before the opponent is completely absorbed, otherwise the punch just now, without strengthening the amplification effect, really can't stand the second time. As the charge distance gradually increased, the momentum on his body became stronger and stronger. If at first it seemed like a bicycle was rushing towards Loya, but when he rushed in front of Loya, it was already a heavy tank. I can't bear to look directly at this face and this muscle. As he got closer, he saw the sweaty bronze skin of the other party from a close distance, and Loya's forehead wrinkled. The magic vibrated, and a blue light appeared on his fist. The frost fist of the ice dragon. Bam! Clack clack. The cold wind blew, and Mattis's forward pace suddenly stopped, and a thick layer of ice froze him from the inside out, making him unable to move. But even so, he did not lose consciousness. Seeing this situation, Loya had to sigh about the opponent's shabby fruit ability. This increase effect is unreasonable after all. Obviously just a rookie, but now he can't even handle dragon-slaying magic. Oh, really? Is handsome ice frozen? I'm you big head. Mattis's words were interrupted, and the aura that continued to strengthen on his body was instantly broken. With a roar, Loya flew up, and then caught him and beat him. Every punch and every kick went in his face. Friendship po Yangquan. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. Mattis was like a piece of rags, which was knocked down by Loya, then knocked back, and then fell again. 7th game, pass. Taking advantage of the time Loya stopped to catch his breath, Yamanaka will announce the result loudly. Then quickly let people go up and drag Mattis, who was beaten beyond recognition, away. It will be disfigured if you hit it again. Even if his face is a regularly fixed and indestructible environment building, or even a texture, he can't stand the hacker Loya modifying the data. Seeing Mattis being carried down, Loya let out a sigh of relief. Damn it, it's too expensive to beat a muscle brother. But it's really cool. Punch to the flesh or something. Mattis looked miserable, but in fact all of them were skin injuries. After a little inspection, the medics gave Huo Shaoshan a no problem gesture. The soldiers in the stands and a group of senior Navy officials also breathed a sigh of relief. Although Loya's ability to cause trouble is gone, at least he knows to be merciful to his own people. However, when they thought so, they couldn't help but simulate it in their hearts. When a muscular brother is passionately hugging him, can he suppress his nausea without punching him to death? Maybe, yes. At this time, in the arena, after the farce, Huo Shaoshan suddenly looked at Loya strangely, and solemnly announced the opponent for the next match. The 8th game. Your opponent is the Navy Headquarters, Vice Admiral Flying Squirrel. Loya. Sure enough, it's a Lieutenant General. It's no wonder that Simon's expression is so ugly. If there is no strength like me, it will be almost at this point. Wrong. Loya turned his head sharply and looked at the location where Yamanaka will be burned. It turned out to be a flying squirrel. How dare you believe it? Sure enough, the blue-faced flying squirrel slowly walked out of the passage with his left hand on the hilt of the sword. At the moment, the flying squirrel's face is ugly, darker than armament hockey. The devil knows why it is him. Obviously there are so many lieutenant generals who are idle in the headquarters. Why did they choose themselves by lottery? What a nonsense thing this is. And not long ago, his own embarrassment was seen by his colleagues, and they had observation hockey and they still didn't know what to do. Everyone knows that he is not Loya's opponent. Am I looking for a fight or a fight? But no matter how he lied in his heart, everyone had witnessed the event of winning the jackpot by lottery, and Zephyr had already drawn up an order. Hey Simon, how long do you think Lieutenant Flying Squirrel will last? Aludo's face was relaxed, and his usual honest face was now wretched and similar to Kizaru's. Are Flying Squirrels strong? Of course, it is not a problem to hang and beat all the members of the elite camp except Loya, or they will go together. But can the Flying Squirrel win? Of course, not possible. As early as when Lucci was playing in the gym, Loya who broke out was no weaker than him. Maybe it can't catch up with the latter in terms of six-style and actual combat experience, but with the dragon-slaying magic and the unique armament hockey, the battle between life and death between the two is between 82. Loya 8, Flying Squirrel 2. Moreover, Loya's resilience is too strong. If he can't kill with one hit, he will be invincible. Moreover, his armament hockey is not weaker than any lieutenant general of the headquarters, or even stronger. With the ice armor that can basically be maintained at all times and the ice coffin that can save lives at a critical juncture, how easy is it to kill with one blow? For these reasons, when he heard Arudo's question in his ear, Simon smiled slightly and took out a Yuhi note with simple printing and rough workmanship. I don't know how long it will last, anyway, I bet 5 minutes. What a coincidence, Aludo said in surprise, and then took out a Yuhi paper from Kabuto. I bought it for 5 minutes too. That's not right. Ningda, who had been in the background for a long time, just took out the note, and suddenly looked confused. Simon, aren't you the dealer? What are you doing with the bet? I'm not the dealer, Simon replied strangely for a moment. But then, his face became very ugly. Hey, I said, are you guys pulling the bills from Loya? The rest of the people were all dumbfounded. Why did they suddenly have a bad premonition? Looking at the flying squirrel walking in slowly, Loya pretended not to know anything. Yeah. It turned out to be Lieutenant General Kiba of the Flying Squirrel. Stop giving me nonsense. The blue-faced flying squirrel roared, loosened the cape on his shoulders, and neatly sized them aside. Clap Lala, the purple-striped suit jacket that was wearing very energetically was torn off, revealing the close-fitting purple shirt underneath. Clang. The samurai's sword, which was visually estimated to be the 21st work of the big quick sword, was pulled out fiercely, and the tip of the sword was aimed at Loya. Come on, give me a treat. The flying squirrel's expression was very tragic, like an unyielding fighter going to the execution ground. There are many gatekeepers in the prison battle, but I am afraid that Flying Squirrel is the most embarrassed one. Because before that, he was in charge of the 8th of the 2 prison battles. In one game, the opponent he met was Akainu. On the other hand, it was the yellow monkey. This TM is embarrassing, isn't it? There are 16 lieutenant generals in the headquarters, and the guards are decided by lottery, and many people have not become the first. In the end, he was good. Not only did he get it, but he also got it twice. This is the 3rd time. The first 2 times, Sakazuki and Pelusolino passed the level he was stationed in, when they were just 2 recruits. This is already a black spot in his life that cannot be erased, even if the opponent is the current generals Akainu and Kyabu. Now it seems that this 3rd breakthrough is already a nail in the coffin. The flying skier looked at the sky and sighed. I have a sentence MMP does not know whether to say it or not. Chapter 157 Reappearing the profound meaning, the sky is coming. Look at what you said. Opposite the flying squirrel, Loya showed a standard, Yaoming face. You are also one of the 16 lieutenant generals of the headquarters, the famous flying squirrel in the sea. I will give you a good time, isn't that uncomfortable? What do you mean? Flying squirrel looked at him strangely, a little stunned. Someone will trouble you. Why is it uncomfortable to give yourself a pleasure? Could it be that after defeating him, someone would make trouble with Loya? Does his flying squirrel have such a big face? And you, meow, don't feel at ease now that you know it. So what were you doing just now? Lao Su's internal organs are still cold, okay. Thinking of this, the flying squirrel's eyes immediately became a little resentful, and Loya got goosebumps when he looked at the resentful woman. Cough. Loya calmly wiped his arm, and continued to exaggerately said, that's for sure. You think, my experience in this prison battle will definitely be publicized by the Navy, right? After all, the purpose of this test is to show muscle to deter pirates. Quote. Then the battle between me and you will definitely spread. Think about it, with your fame and status in the sea, if I kill you in seconds, what will those pirates think of me? What do you think? Stand and watch. The flying squirrel waved angrily. Stop talking nonsense, come on, show everyone your strength. Although he said so, the flying squirrel was still very proud of himself. Yes, the old man has been across the sea for decades, and his reputation is very good. As the so-called hard work is high, everyone admires it. Cough, some shameless, but for this face, Loya still has to give it to himself. If Loya really kills him in seconds, then there must be endless trouble waiting for Loya. Because there are countless pirates who want to be famous in the ocean, it is undoubtedly much less difficult to find a young man like Loya than to find an old-fashioned powerful group to establish his prestige in the future, but it must be equally numerous. As for Loya killing the flying squirrel, who cares? Fighting is not a game of poker, you know you will win or lose if you show your cards. Does the ghost know if the flying squirrel underestimated the enemy and was seized by him? After all, no matter how cruel the death battle in prison is, it is nothing but a performance directed and performed by the Navy. To sum up, the flying squirrel thought that Roja was worried about his prestige in the sea and did not want to kill him directly, so he talked a lot of nonsense. In this regard, the members of the elite camp have something to say. Simon, doesn't the time count since the announcement? It's not a bad feeling anymore. But the situation is really wrong. This is the last thing I saved when I was a gangster. I still want to win this time without losing money, and I plan to save money to exchange weapons. Now it seems that I have to pounce. In the stands, Ming clenched the note angrily, thinking about the chances of taking the money out of Loya's mouth. Simon also smiled bitterly. He didn't expect that he, who is a know-it-all, would have a day to do tricks, but he was still tricked by a former handyman, like Loya, a real low-level person in society. After smiling bitterly for a while, Simon sighed. Of course, the calculation starts at the beginning of the announcement. Hey, mistakes, really missteps. As he spoke, Simon crumpled the note into a ball, activated his fruit ability, and flicked his finger at Loya under the stage. Boom! The light and fluffy paper balls were ejected, and the speed was like a bullet. Ding! Under the stands, Roja's ears trembled imperceptibly, and then something slammed into his protective ice armor. Did you find out so soon? As expected of Simon. Loya smiled slightly and continued to argue with the flying squirrel. Intel. No more plans for you to abstain. A loud shout resounded through the arena. The sound was so sudden and so deafening, Loya, who was performing, shrank his neck subconsciously. In the stands, Zephyr sat down with an angry face after roaring, and looked at Loya impatiently. Humph! This bastard. I don't know why he's stalling for time, but he just needs to stop him from letting his plot succeed. Zephyr said this to Sengoku next to him, who recalled what someone had done and nodded in agreement. Standing up and shouting loudly. Start immediately, otherwise, you will be punished to clean the toilet. The two lieutenant generals of the headquarters went to clean the toilet. The scene must be very interesting. Sure enough, Sengoku was the worst one. The time is indeed almost up. Those who bought flying squirrels for 5 minutes accounted for about 3/5 of the total number of people, and the rest were scattered small bets. If the battle is ended now, although the maximum profit cannot be achieved, some people must make some money, so that his business can become bigger and stronger. Well, it must be bigger and stronger. Loya calculated in her heart and quickly made a decision. The surging magic power began to gather, making bursts of humming. Like a giant dragon gradually awakening, it slowly raised its head, full of majesty. As soon as that magic power appeared, people felt a deep sense of suffocation. Many soldiers subconsciously stopped breathing, afraid of disturbing the source of the coercion. This is the momentum of Longwei, the top predator. The flying squirrel, who was enjoying flattery, stared blankly at Loya, who was getting more and more powerful, and didn't react a bit. Hey, didn't we just chat well just now? How do you start? No, you started without saying hello. But flying squirrels are flying squirrels after all, and they have been through hundreds of battles. Even though Loya's attacking intention came very suddenly, it was enough for him to react. Moreover, the attack of the swordsman was already known for its swiftness and ferocity. Clang! The long sword vibrated, cut through the air, and hissed. Flying Squirrel took a step forward, stepped on the ground to create a big pit, and then pulled down the samurai sword in his hand suddenly, and Luoya shot violently in a second. Cut! Boom! A terrifying aura erupted from the flying squirrel, surging in all directions, blowing away the dust on the ground. At the same time, a huge silver moon kiba appeared in the air, shot out like lightning, and flew straight to Loya. Everywhere along the way, the hard floor was easily cut open like butter, and the earth trembled with the might of the sword. This is a sword that the flying squirrel poured all his energy into and concentrated its destructive power. If this sword is defeated, then there is really nothing to fight. Although Loya's movements were a little slower, he still clenched his fists, and armament hockey wrapped it up without hesitation, punching out. The frost fist of the ice dragon. The speed of the sword chi was so fast that it was almost the moment Roha had just punched, and the sword chi had already reached his body. Then, crack, crack. The sword energy, which was obviously intangible, suddenly made a shattering sound like glass, and at the same time, the ice armor on Loya's hand was also shattered. But even if it is broken, the remaining power of that sword energy is really amazing. The tiny sword energy that shot out was like thousands of steel needles, leaving deep scratches on the Roha ice armor. Some strong enough sword chi even broke through the ice armor and rushed directly to Loya hiding behind the ice armor. If you take a hit, even Roha will be severely injured by the body without the protection of dragon scales. However, in the face of a terrifying abnormal constitution, Loya, who also developed armament hockey to the limit, had enough time for the ice armor to harden his body. The sword Chi Yue could only unwillingly let out a crisp sound of gold and iron symphony, and helplessly dissipated. Sure enough, it didn't work. Looking at the broken sword energy flying in the sky, the expression on the flying squirrel's face was very complicated. Both helpless and happy. Congratulations, Luo. Just as he was talking, he suddenly heard Loya's cry. Hide to the left. The flying squirrel was stunned for a second. What the hell is he doing? Should I hide or not? Should I hide or what is this kid going to mess up again? For a moment, the thoughts in flying squirrel's mind turned sharply, but the sense of danger, like a natural disaster, that he had never experienced before, was still clear even without observation hockey, causing the hairs on his neck to stand upside down. Almost subconsciously, the flying squirrel resolutely obeyed Loya's words, started shaving with maximum horsepower, and flashed desperately to the left. Immediately afterwards, Loya's voice came leisurely, obviously not far ahead, but the voice sounded so far away. Dragon Slayer profound truth, Tianyu is coming. The next moment, a pure white light Jinchuriki column emitting an indescribably dangerous aura instantly flew past where the flying squirrel was standing. Wherever he went, it was as if there was an invisible giant paintbrush that painted the earth white without delay. It was clearly loud, but the surroundings were so silent. At this time, a heat wave suddenly rose in the stands. Big Spitfire. A terrifying giant magma fist flew out of the audience, and the air became distorted. But the direction of the magma jet was not Loya, but above the protective wall of the arena. At first glance, it seems that Akainu is going crazy and wants to kill everyone present. Chapter 158 Garp, who went to sea privately, and was sunk. In the end, what happened? Why did Akina-sama attack us? Many navies were at a loss, staring blankly at the magma and frost spreading to their feet. Wait, frost. Everyone suddenly came back to their senses and looked up. As expected, the arena where there were only broken walls and Madara's bloodstains just now was pure white. Ice layers with a thickness of at least 10 centimeters covered the surrounding walls and floors, and those who didn't know thought it was an East Island that had been covered with snow for many years. And what came along with the freezing was the suffocating cold current. Just taking a breath, the whole person was full of energy. Akainu's magma did not rush to the crowd, but clinging to the protective wall, moving forward quickly, forming a large circle around the arena. Taking the magma of Akainu as the boundary, 1 meter away, the terrifying cold air made the dust in the air clearly visible, not just in one place, but everywhere. At this moment, the entire arena is like a huge block of ice, and the dust and stone fragments inside are embedded in it after being frozen, and are impacted by the invisible aura and kept in midair. It was beautiful, but lifeless. Gollum. Good. So scary. The soldiers swallowed their saliva and could not help but continue to retreat. Look over there. Is that the sea? At this moment, a voice woke everyone up. They followed the line of sight of the people around them, and at a glance, the whole person stood still. I saw that where the light Jinchuriki column passed, the thick wall was penetrated, and it continued to move forward along the ground until it penetrated most of the cliff. The ground was plowed into a deep ravine, and the cut was as smooth as a mirror. Whether it is slate or soil, they are neatly divided and then frozen. But that's not the most shocking. On the edge of the cliff, the sea that can be seen is still white. The terrifying light Jinchuriki column separates the sea, and then waits for the sea to pour back, and the high waves that roll up are immediately frozen. From their position, 2 Halfark waves are frozen, as if someone was there. A channel was built on the sea surface. Hey, this move is too dangerous, isn't it? In the stands, Zephyr and others stood up one after another, looking nervously at the place where the wall was destroyed. Sengoku even had a dark face, and glanced dangerously at Loa. If it wasn't for Akainu taking the advantage of the fruit and making a decisive move, using the heat of the magma to prevent the frost from spreading, how many soldiers would have survived? Yes, Sengoku has no doubt that these elite soldiers will survive in the face of that force. But fortunately, this did not happen after all, so the focus for now is... Boom! The next second, Loya, who was still complacent, immediately fell down. Not only was he lying down, he was also embedded in the ground more than a meter deep. Fuck, what happened? Buried deep in the ground, Loya's head was dizzy and a little dazed. Isn't he just showing off his new moves? Why did you get beaten up again? Tianyu Descends is not a large-scale move that does not distinguish between enemy and foe. Could it be? Loya suddenly had a bad feeling. He seemed to have forgotten something just now. That is when Tianyu comes to activate, there is a process of gathering the power of frost around it. Before that, he seemed to spread the cold air out. If the frozen ground of the end is the fusion of the ice dragon's death force and the force of ice, then Tianyu's descent is the ultimate application of the force of frost, condensing the frost around it, thereby launching the terrifying light Jinchuriki column. The effect is a bit similar to Shaoqiang Shiratori. The ice-fighting method of the glacier, which uses the power of frost to stop the movement of objects from the atomic level to achieve the purpose of destruction. But the power is not that much. This is also the reason why he mobilized that level of magic power just now, because if you want to activate Tianyu Descend, you need to have enough ice attribute elements in the surrounding environment. That light, Jinchuriki column, is not so much magic made by Roha, but a bullet fired by Roha. After condensing the surrounding magic power, it is released through the compression and condensation of the system. The best combination of this move is to use it in the area where the ice element is abundant after releasing the permafrost. But Loya dare not use the permafrost here, after all. Bang! Loya broke through the soil on his back and jumped out of the deep pit. Then, at first glance, I saw Sengoku, who was gearing up beside him. The second sight, that's a circle of boiling magma around, and the frozen shivering navy behind the magma. Gollum. Loya swallowed his saliva and slammed the back of his head. I said, Marshal Sengoku, I didn't do it on purpose, do you believe it? Trust you, you big head. Countless. Including the soldiers in the stands, everyone roared neatly. The next second, a lot of messy things were thrown over the sky. Whoa. In just 1 second, Loya was deeply buried in the garbage. In the auditorium, Kizaru glanced at Loya, who had only one leg outside, fanned the wind with his hand at the corner of his mouth, and continued to tease Kuzan. It's so scary, so scary. Kuzan, why don't you change your wish? Like being a marshal or something, then I think it's more realistic. Hearing this, Kuzan silently pulled down his blindfold and folded his arms around his chest. Well, I think so too. Humph. Akainu just snorted and sat back. It's just that Kizaru's words buried a deep impression in his heart. Pulling down the brim of the baseball cap on his head, Akainu's eyes flickered in the shadows. Marshal. Why can't it be me? In the naval headquarters, the largest and most commonly used one is naturally the port in front of the main square of the headquarters fortress. But as a military base, it is undoubtedly very irrational to have only one port to berth. Once it is destroyed in wartime, the Navy will play a fart. So in addition to there, Marineford has several alternate ports scattered around the island. Most of these ports are hidden and not easily detected, even hidden in buildings. Usually the secrecy is extremely strict, except for the Navy, who is in charge of garrisoning. Even the lieutenant generals can't say anything. But this does not include the old Navy fritters. No, Navy hero, Tekken Karp. As one of the oldest veterans of the Navy headquarters, Sengoku has more than 10,000 people. Long before the Golden Lions invaded and destroyed them, he was familiar with the locations of the hidden ports of the Navy headquarters. At the same time, also know how to use their ace, don't do stupid things. Standing on the deck of the dog-headed warship, Garp looked worriedly at the slowly rising iron gate ahead. Report. Everything is ready and ready to sail. At this time, a Navy dressed as a colonel came to Karp, saluted and reported the situation. His eyes were full of excitement and excitement. So excited, so excited. The number 7 port, which has never been used by a single Eternal, has opened its gates. And the one who uses it is the dignified naval hero Garp. It's so cool. Different from the excited look of the officer in charge of stationing here, Garp felt only awkward at the moment. After all, this time he was alone, and he made a private decision without any declaration, not the secret mission he said when he fooled people. The look in the other's eyes made the shameless but upright Garp feel uncomfortable and just wanted to escape from this place as soon as possible. The thought of Ace, who had disappeared at sea, made Garp feel restless. He thought worriedly, don't mess with Loya, Ace. The concern for his grandson overwhelmed his own embarrassment. With an old face, Kapuma said in a deep voice, well, let's go now. Yes. This is the rhythm of the big task. Seeing Garp's serious expression, the colonel sighed in his heart, and then quickly ran to give an order to loosen the rope and let the warship leave. Woo! The dog-headed warship made a low whistle and slowly sailed out. Today is a rare good weather. The bright sun shines on people, bringing a touch of warmth to the coolness of early winter, which is very comfortable. Seeing that the warship turned as planned and there was no one around, Karp breathed a sigh of relief. It's very dangerous. If Sengoku finds out, he will definitely sink me. But the so-called joy comes from sadness. Just as he was thinking about it, a thick white light Jinchuriki column suddenly shot out from the island. Looking in that direction, the target was the dog-headed warship he was on. Faced with this sudden attack, Karp was stunned. Fuck, Sengoku reacts so fast. And what the hell is this? Chapter 159 Straight. Live. Loya is also an old fritter. Although he came to this world for a short time, he is still very clear about the structure and layout of the naval headquarters. He knew that on the other side of the wall of the arena was the cliff, the most remote location. No one would stay there for nothing, and the grass was overgrown and the scenery was not good. Even warships that often travel to and from the headquarters will turn early and go to the port directly in front of the fortress. So I am at ease and zoom in on that side. But, that's a coincidence, isn't it? If Loya knew what was going on, he would have observed a second of silence for Carp and said, 10 minutes and hug sorry GN. Returning to the arena, after discussion, Sengoku decided to delay the issuance of Loya's punishment. In any case, this is the stage for Roha to show his strength, in a serious prison battle. Generally speaking, unless the graduates are defeated, the sword will continue. In addition, although the situation just now is dangerous, it is a fact that there are no dead people. Even because of Akainu's decisiveness and boldness, there are very few injured, and they are all slightly frostbite. So Sengoku tolerated it generously, allowing Loya to continue fighting. When he graduates, there will be time to clean him up. Dang! Simon came back to his senses, and the first thing was to press the button of the stopwatch in his hand to stop timing. Then he glanced at the time displayed above. Simon curled his lips and cursed in a low voice, 10 and 30 seconds. Profiteers, shameless. Ah, my wolf Kiba stick, my little treasury. Minged, looking like I was already a salted fish, slumped on the chair with his eyes blank. Those who heard the scene were almost in tears and those who saw it were sad. Even his iconic nose of the plane is now lying softly on the back of the chair, no longer upright as it used to be. Seeing Minged, Simon was happy. Although I have made a lot of bets, I am a little tight when I lose this time, but compared with Minged, I am still very lucky. Back on the field, Huo Shaoshan patted off the ice slag from his body and cleared his throat. Then, 8th, victory. Game 9, your opponent is. Before he could finish speaking, a voice interrupted Huo Shaoshan. We abstain. Huo Shaoshan rarely opened his eyes, the smile on his face froze, and he felt very speechless. However, this situation of abstention is not unheard of. In the past prison battles, whether it is graduates or guard pirates, there are precedents for abstention. So slightly startled, he quickly calmed down. Just. Dalmisia, are you sure you want to abstain and let Loya pass the 9th test? Haoyao Yamanaka will focus on the word, 9th game, with a heavy accent and repeat the confirmation. Dalmisia, one of the vice admirals of the Navy headquarters, is a master of the animal system who can maintain a half-beast form for a long time. He is very clear about his personality, and he is not the kind of guy who will give up easily. And just like the hound, he is very aggressive himself, and I don't know if it is a side effect of the devil fruit or what. But it is such a guy who will give up on his own initiative and let Loya pass, which is a bit beyond Huo Shaoshan's expectations. Ah, yes. Lieutenant General Dalmisia seemed to be in a bad mood, with a pair of dog ears drooping. He was obviously ready, and he was looking forward to fighting with Loya, but the attack that the other party showed just now made him really powerless. Even if it is a 3-person siege, as an animal-type ability, he clearly knows the advantages of animal-type fruits. The animal fruit is indeed the weakest one, but the power it brings to the capable person is also the most stable, comprehensive and lasting one. If an animal-capable person can play against an opponent of a certain level without losing, then adding another opponent of the same level to participate will only consume the opponent's physical strength, and it will never be the straw that overwhelms the camel. Unless the people who come have some special ability to assist each other and make the attack more deadly. It can be seen that Loya will not be afraid of being besieged by himself and others. Because he not only did not lose, but also defeated the Flying Squirrel, which was also a powerful faction among them. As long as he can't break through the opponent's defense and achieve a own hit kill, then with the help of the animal fruit ability, the time that Roha can fight will be a terrifying value. Even if he doesn't use the dangerous move just now, the power of one punch and one kick is enough to defeat them. However, these are only comparisons on the surface, and it is impossible to draw conclusions from the data alone in the real battle. The real reason for Dalmisia and others to make this decision is because the other party seems to be unreliable. He used such a dangerous skill just now, which almost caused serious damage to the Navy, so what if he couldn't hold back when he was fighting with himself and others? What the hell? It's going to be dead. To sum up, after several discussions with each other in Dalmisia, they decided to abstain. This stinky and shameless monster with the title of recruit but in fact is inhumanly powerful, let's leave it to the equally inhuman general in the last level to clean up. As for us, it's good to be an honest audience. Yes, it is like that. Okay, then, in the 9th game, Loya wins. Huo Shaoshan also recalled the scene just now, knowing that the 3 lieutenant generals of the headquarters really had nothing to do with Loya, and could only reluctantly choose to compromise, announced the results. Go and inform Chambord immediately and get ready. After the fire Yamanaka would determine that Dalmisia and others abstained, Sengoku, who was informed, quickly issued an order. Champagne. What's the matter there? Sengoku's voice was clearly heard in his ears, and Loya raised his head and stared at the soldier who trotted away. As for Loya's gaze, Sengoku quickly shifted his gaze after a moment's contact, then picked up his cape and strode out behind the soldier. Looking at Sengoku like that, I can't ask why, but if you want to understand the situation, there is another option besides Simon. Loya picked up the frozen dried fish t-shirt, and walked towards the frightened flying squirrel while slapping the crushed ice on it. That, flying squirrel. Don't talk, let me be quiet. As soon as Loya spoke, the flying skier raised his hand to stop him from continuing. Well, I'll ask someone else. After saying that, Loya turned to leave, and went to Yamanaka to find out the situation. He didn't know what the flying squirrel was thinking now, but he could more or less guess it. A month after he traveled to the Op world, excluding the Dragon Scissors pirates, the first person he met was the flying squirrel. In the flying squirrel's eyes, he has always been his back, even if his strength is growing up day by day. From the very beginning when he was barely able to let out the roar of the ice dragon, slaying the Scissorhands pirates, and now he can easily play the powerful and terrifying secret moves, Loya's growth is not only imprinted on the floor of the training room, but also imprinted in the flying squirrel's heart. Because Loya's growth rate is really too fast and shocking. Incredible. At first, he just thought about the lack of fresh blood in the Navy in recent years, and wanted to attract some powerful stragglers to join in to make up for the shortcomings. But he never imagined that he would be such a monster by his random move. If a long time ago, the flying squirrel even said that Zephyr still had doubts about the origin of Loya, then by now, this doubt has long since disappeared and no longer exists. After all, no force is willing to even say that it can take out a genius of the level of Loya to be a spy. In other words, the Navy has really picked up the treasure this time. But that's the hardest part, isn't it? As soon as he thought of himself, the flying squirt felt sad in comparison. Over the past few decades, he has been running back and forth on the sea, and has experienced nearly 1,000 battles and slaughter. As a result, in half a year, others have become stronger than me, and they are so much stronger. Now the gap between him and Loya is too big for him to understand, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it is the difference between heaven and earth. When Huo Shaoshan announced that Loya had won, he had a familiar feeling when he knew that Akainu and Kizaru became generals. Therefore, the flying squirrel just wants to be quiet now, considering whether to buy a man or where to save it for the rest of his life. When the flying squirrel was in a tangle, Loya licked his face and found Huo Shaoshan. Hey, that, Haoyao Yamanaka, is the 10th game going to Chambord. Shampoo. Why go to Shampoo? Huo Shaoshan looked at Loya strangely, and then suddenly realized, oh, I see, you don't know Loya song, right? Well, what should I know? That's a good question. Huo Shaoshan patted Loya's shoulder and smiled kindly, the purpose of informing Chambord is of course for live broadcast. Puff. Loya spurted out a mouthful of old blood. Wong Defa. What did I hear? Live streaming. And this kind of bullshit. Chapter 160. It's a deal. It is not surprising that Loya was shocked, Huo Shaoshan said with a smile. Actually, many years ago, Marshall and the others set the 10th test to be broadcast live. Let all pirates see the power of the new generation of the Navy. But as you know, even the current 3 major admirals of the Navy, the top natural fruit person, ended up in the 9th game at the most, and didn't have the chance to see the scenery of the last game. Speaking of this, Huo Shaoshan seems to feel a little inappropriate. After all, the other party is a general, and it is not very appropriate to talk about others behind their backs. So he quickly changed the subject. Up to now, everyone actually regarded this last test as a joke, and never expected anyone to get to this point. But, Huo Shaoshan patted Loya's shoulder heavily. Fortunately, there is you, Loya. You must do your best. Co-authoring I'm still a test machine, to see if Zephyr and Sengoku have their brains in the water, right? The sense of smell in the market is very keen, and Luoya directly guessed what Huo Shaoshan had not finished. In fact it is. For this setting, General Crane vetoed it, and then gave Sengoku and Zephyr a lesson with a black face. After all, Crane was a comrade in arms of the same period, and she was the only lady alive to this day. In the face of a lieutenant general, even with the title of General Staff Officer of the entire army, the Marshal Sengoku and the Chief Instructor Zephyr were still trained like grandsons. However, at that time, the elite camp was not weaker than the current one, but stronger and stronger each time. This trend gave Sengoku and Zephyr a lot of confidence, and the two stuck to the original plan. Then, not much to mention. Anyway, until Roha appeared, including Sengoku and Zephyr, the two guys who rely on waves instead of paddles, didn't think anyone could really go to the last race. Therefore, while Roha is shouldering the burden of showing his strength to frighten the pirates, he has to rehabilitate Sengoku and Zephyr, and he is really busy. The 10th, unprecedented 10th, the battle between recruits and generals, this. As expected of Loya who defeated Scavenger Beard and Hunter Jones. Such strength, even if the 3 generals did not have it back then. Long live the Navy, long live Loya. The stands were buzzing and there was a lot of discussion. He actually did it. The unprecedented 10th game will be shown to everyone for the first time. Admiral vs Elite Battalion Recruits. This is truly a historic moment. Sakazuki, I didn't hear from Marshal Sengoku, how about you? Kuzan tilted his head and looked at Akainu wearing a baseball cap beside him. As a frozen fruit person, he is the one who understands how strong the Akainu lava fruit's restraint on the ice attribute ability is. Although he is younger than Akainu, the two are almost the same in terms of strength. But if the two were to fight between life and death, the one who would lose must be him. This is the biggest weakness of the natural fruit. Each element has its own weaknesses, just as his ice fears heat. Although the natural fruit is powerful, as long as it is targeted, the effect it can exert will be greatly reduced. And although Roha is an animal-type phantom beast, his power is ice attribute after all. Against Akainu, let alone trying to defeat him, it would be extremely difficult to even support him for 30 minutes. As Loya's nominal teacher, Kuzan naturally needs to inquire about this question. Beside Kuzan, Akainu raised his head after hearing the words, did not answer, but turned his gaze to Kyabu on the far right of the 3. You've just returned from a mission, so I haven't had time to inform you. But it's not too late to tell you now. Roya's opponent in the 10th game is Kizaru, not me. Speaking of this, Akainu showed a confident smile. After all, Marshal Sengoku also considered the relationship between fruit restraint. In order to let Roya show the real power, I specially let Kizaru take action. In his opinion, even Loya, the strongest recruit in history, would definitely last for less than 30 minutes in the face of his own attack. This is the confidence he has as a general, and he is also very confident in the ability of his lava fruit. Hey, you obviously have more time off than me. On the side, Kizaru complained with a wretched expression. Why must it be me? Luo Yasong is so scary and scary. Kuzan, shouldn't you still be playing? You master and apprentice are familiar with each other, and how to play well is always better than an outsider like me. Forget it. Hearing that it wasn't Akainu, Kuzan calmed down, with the same expression on his face, and pulled down his blindfold again. It's such a troublesome thing, why don't you sleep a little longer? Besides, my fruit ability was also restrained by Roha, and I would suffer a lot in a real fight. No matter how much you suffer, you are still a general. Kizaru said, could it be that Loya can still defeat you? Kuzan's ice is restrained by Loya's ice, and it's not a secret among the higher UPS. But to say that Roha can defeat the general, not only Kizaru doesn't believe it, but even Kuzan himself doesn't believe he can do it. Indeed, Loya is only a little worse than them in terms of speed and strength now. And with that terrifying resilience, it's hard to say who wins and who loses in a head-to-head fight. Except for the yellow monkey. But the most famous of the three generals is not the same physical skills as the older generation, but their devil fruit ability. Ice, lava, light. These three fruits have been developed by them to the level of awakening, and the level of awakening is very high. Loya's profound skills are indeed very threatening, but how can they have no countermeasures? Once fully fired, only Loya will be suppressed. However, thinking of this, Huang Yuan remembered something. He put his face close to Kuzan, and half of his upper body was lying on Akainu sitting in the middle. Hey, I said Kuzan. Does Rosen have any weaknesses? The expression on Kuzan's face was unnatural, and he yelled with a dark face. Get out. Allah, I'm so stingy. Kizaru muttered in dissatisfaction, and then changed the question. Kuzan, does Loya have another transforming skill that hasn't been used before? Is that the one that doubles the strength with a bang? Hearing Kizaru's words, Akainu also looked sideways slightly. Indeed, the ability that Loya and Zephyr used to fight must be taken seriously. Obviously, at the beginning of the battle, Loya, who was just a chicken, was able to face the toughness after the transformation. It is really hard to shake the dignified physique powerhouse Zephyr. This is something the three of them are unwilling to do. And, he actually succeeded. Although he was still beaten in the end, he resisted it no matter what, and he was defeated without a single move. For that skill, Akainu was impressed. Because at that time, facing Loya's Longwei, he had an irresistible thought. Allah, it's really a sharp question. Kuzan's eyes flickered, he didn't know what he was thinking. Suddenly, he spread his hands. Help me with the mission 3 times, and I'll tell you the specific information. Akainu. Stupid. Kiba hurts. Liver hurts. It's just outrageous. Kizaru. Twice can't be more. Snapped. Kuzan and Kizaru high-fived and laughed. Deal. Deal. Akainu, who was stuck between the two, had an ashen complexion and roared in a low voice. Do you want me to lie down on the ground to make room for you guys? Just get out of the way.